This is Circa Ignem podcast episode number 024. We'd like to welcome Mr. Charles Williams as our guest tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Manny, good evening.
Good evening.
Rick, good evening.
Good evening.
Charles is a husband. He's a father of 5. He was in the Air Force for 15 years. He's a cradle Catholic. Works for a small local utility company. Anything else I'm missing in there, Charles?
Nope, about covers it.
Good. All right, and we're going to read from The Ultimate Gift, which is by Jim
Stovall.
Yeah, Stovall. Miss Hastings and I followed Gus and Jason to the last fence post, standing in a long line that stretched out of sight. "Welcome to Fence Post 101, Gus proclaimed proudly. He quickly showed Jason how to dig a post hole, set the post, and string the wire in a straight line. Even at 75, Gus Caldwell showed immense strength and incredible stamina. He made everything look easy. He turned to Jason and said, "Now you try," and Gus joined Miss Hastings and me near the truck. Jason stumbled through the process almost comically, and Gus called out, "Well, hopefully you get the hang of it before you beat yourself to death. Somebody will come by to pick you up for the noon meal." Jason seemed alarmed and called out, "How far is this fence supposed to go?" As Gus helped Miss Hastings and me into the truck, Gus laughed and said, "No more than a mile, and then we'll turn and go the other way. Don't worry. We won't run out of things for you to do. I wish I had $1 for every post hole good old Red Stevens and I dug all across Texas." We left Jason there to his labors. So why's that book? What's the reason why you brought it up?
I think I got that book at a time in life that I kind of needed it a lot.
Okay.
It was a high school graduation gift from my dad.
Nice.
Have any of you guys read that book?
No.
It's a good one. It's not explicitly Catholic, or even it is Christian, but it's. I think I'll leave a little bit out there because it is worth the read, and there is a little bit of a reason to get to the ending without knowing what's coming. But kind of let you know what's important in life that we don't always see until we've gone through so much life, and the main character is kind of upset that everybody else in his family is getting some piece of this fortune, right?
Okay.
A tangible piece of this fortune, and he's waiting to see what his piece is, and that's kind of where the book goes. And so being able to see, and you guys can probably, you're not dumb, you can kind of see where it's going, but The Ultimate Gift is not something that's tangible. And I kind of always just remembered I only read it once. It wasn't one of those books that I went through a couple times or referenced back to, but it always kind of hit me like looking at life in a different way and what's important and what the tangible things in life and how they come and go and things like that. So that's just a book that I've bought it for a couple people at that point in life. I bought it for a couple of guys that are older that haven't quite had that lesson yet, maybe didn't grow up with a dad that guy did, but it's just a good book.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that section that I found, I liked it because, grew up, my dad and I grew up putting fence posts and fences in. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this, I can resonate with this. Yeah. I know exactly what he's doing.
Exactly. It's part of the gift in itself right there.
Exactly. All right. So we're calling this the not so lightning round question.
Okay.
Or group of questions, I should say. What's your wake up routine like?
I have a couple different ones. I'll go with the more interesting one that makes me sound more awesome. On a running morning, which is not every morning, a few times a week. Wake up at 3:30. I typically will wake up 2 or 3 minutes before my alarm somehow. I don't know how my brain does it. Wake up, bring the dog out first thing. Then I grab some water, about a tablespoon of salt in the water.
Okay.
16 ounces or so of water. I'll hit between 6 and 10 miles. Steady state cardio. zone 2 at the most.
Nice.
Just easy pace. A lot of hills up there where I live, so nothing. I'm not sprinting. And then get back to the house. Grab my first cup of coffee and turn on the computer, which is new for me still. I've only been doing that for 6 months or so, but and then I just kind of ease into my workday, while I'm still sweating, which has been beneficial, because when I first started, I wasn't doing the early morning running. I was doing afternoon running, and I didn't know what to do with myself during the day. I'd be sitting on my desk and my knees would be bouncing all day. So trying to get into a routine of early morning exercise has been nice. On a less interesting morning, I wake up at 5:30, grab the first cup of coffee before water, and turn on the computer and get into my workday. But
so no shower. Sorry, Manny. No shower post run. You're just jumping right
straight into work.
Yeah.
I typically I'll hit another workout after work. Nice. So it would be a little bit mute to shower after the run.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of a home office, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it took me a while to get used to, but it's like I could be as disgusting as I want to, and nobody cares.
It can stink like Charles all he wants.
my dog still stinks more than me, so she's in there with me all day. I'm not the stinky one.
That's awesome.
So which of those two routines, which one is more common?
It's pretty even. It's pretty even, to be honest.
So on off, is it one day off day, and then
I kind of bounce around. I try. It depends on what I'm training for. Okay. If I'm training for distance running, I'll try to do like 5 consecutive days. If I'm training for speed, it'll be like every other day, and then I'll do strength training in the morning. Other than that, but I got to do it before work. Like, that's something I've learned about myself. If I get into my work day and my work day goes long, or I have a hard day or something
it's
like that,
I
get too into just skipping it, or my evening with my wife and kids is too important, and then I want to skip that. So I skip the workout. And I've learned about myself through the years. It's like if I give myself room for an excuse, I'll make it.
Yeah.
I'll make the excuse. So
well, and it's easier as the day gets long.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's totally my James. It's the same conversation we have all the time. It's like if it doesn't happen in the morning, it's just I should back up in terms of, if I have had a particularly stressful day, typically that's a really good motivation of just wanting to get some rage and anger out.
Yeah.
But in a workout, but it's not because it's like, oh, this is good for me. It's like, no, I just need to get this out of my system.
That's therapy at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, I've gotten to the point where the run is for sure my therapy. It's where I do a lot of my praying. Mm-hmm. And in the morning, if I can get a good hour and a half run in the morning, and everything that's on my mind is getting shipped up to Jesus at that time, and it's definitely needed in my life. And I didn't used to do it, and I mean we can get more into that, but the fitness thing came into my life late.
Gotcha.
And I had a lot of the sloth demon through the years, but.
So you mentioned competition. How often are you competing in running?
Not as much as I'd like to, but it's expensive. Okay. Unless you're at an elite level and you're getting sponsored into these things, you got to pay to play. And I enjoy it, and I'm a very competitive person, so I like getting out there, and especially since I feel like I'm at a point where I can compete in my age group and stuff like that. I would say in the last 18 months, I've probably done. Trying to think of my little participation trophy rack. probably like 15 or so different competitions.
Wow.
Between distance running, some shorter races, and then I do some hybrid stuff. It's not CrossFit. I haven't gone the full CrossFit route. I haven't fully taken the red pill on that. I still think there's a lot of dangerous stuff that I shouldn't be doing approaching 40, but the Spartan races, I've done a few of those.
Nice.
Those are a lot of fun.
I've done 2 of those.
Yeah. I've my first weekend out, I did a trifecta.
Oof. In the same weekend?
Same weekend.
Nice.
A beast on Saturday, and a sprint, and a
super
on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I got 3rd place in the sprint.
Atta baby.
Yeah, I was pretty happy about that. The beast killed me. The beast, I was dying. It's
Where'd you do it?
13 point in San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
In November. It just happened to be World Championship for age group beast running for the beast run itself.
Okay.
So the sprint and the super were not like a national competition.
Right.
So it was just a normal group that would show up to a super and a sprint. But for the beast on Saturday, it was like all these elite guys and the who's who's of age group. You know, elite runs separate, but the age group guys, it was competitive. So I think I ran my butt off, and I felt like I was doing good. And when I finished like 22nd age group.
That's awesome.
But the guys that were in front of me, they do this what they do. So
they're paid to do it. Yeah,
a lot of them. Yeah, I mean,
not all of them, but
not all of them, but some of them are sponsored and stuff like that. But I just enjoy the competition of it, and I found out that if I have something on the calendar that's coming up, I'll push myself more.
Yep.
And coming from somebody that went through a lot of like health issues and stuff that were just like daily troubles, like I need something to keep me going on that side of things. And honestly, it's like the fitness thing, like it recentered my life. Like when I got to the point where I was like, all right, I need to make a change, it made everything else came together with it. Like I started getting more focused on everything. My priorities got better. I started being a better dad, a better husband, you know, diet and everything just became second nature. You know, it's like, wow, like I could fix this one thing in my life. All these things I don't have control over. The one thing that's sitting in front of me, literally the food on my plate, I have control over. You know, getting outside and running, getting outside and lifting, doing something like that, I have control over those small things. Screw everything else, right? You know, and then getting that thought process just put all the other things into perspective, you know.
Yeah. It's fascinating how much, to your point, like when you start focusing on the mental side of any sort of training, right? Like when you actually start applying yourself on the mental. So I train jiu-jitsu quite a bit, and it's totally a lot of it is mental in terms of, are you going to push through or are you going to throttle back? Yeah. Right? Are you going to push through the pain? Are you going to push through, you know, okay, maybe you feel like, okay, you're getting just freaking wiped across the freaking mat right now, but are you going to push through that and at least finish mentally as a champion, right? Because that's the kicker right there, and it translates to everything else. Yeah, right. It's not, to your point about the food on your plate. Am I going to go get thirds, or am I going to be disciplined right now mentally to say, no, I don't need it. I just want it at this point. Absolutely, right? You know, absolutely. Or am I going to lose my crap on my kids versus no, I'm going to take 10 seconds to breathe through this. And then show them compassion and love when they really do deserve me being completely insane on them. But I should reflect the Father, you know, like the Heavenly Father in terms of, no, we're going to be compassionate and loving. Yeah, it's awesome. That's cool.
It's taking control over things that you think you didn't have control over. Totally. You'll change your life.
Or making the excuse that you don't have control over.
Exactly. Like, right. We know we have control over certain things. We're lazy. Yeah. You know, and that's what I had gotten to. I had gotten to a point of laziness. And you mentioned, like, going back for thirds and stuff. Portions was one of my biggest issues. Don't get me wrong. I ate all of the crap. All of the crap. You know, I didn't have a limit to what was going to be on my plate. I didn't care. Yeah. And you know, I wasn't morbidly obese. I was still getting up and going to work, but I was heavy for my weight, and I was experiencing a lot of, like, you know, issues because of that. I had headaches every day. I had migraines like 2 or 3 times a week, and it was all of the other excuses. It's like, oh, I need different Tylenol. I need, you know, this, that, or the other. I need to go to the doctor and figure out why I'm having headaches, and it wasn't focusing on, like, what I was putting into my body on a daily basis. And, as I told my wife, like, I hid so much from you, like, with my diet, like, you had no idea, like, how bad it got. Like, I would eat, when I was traveling for work, I would eat dinner at home on Sunday evening. Full dinner. Like you said, go back for seconds and thirds. And then I would drive to the Bay, and on the way out there, I would drive through McDonald's and get, like, 3 double cheeseburgers and a McChicken and pound that, too. Yep. And just because I wanted it, not because I needed it or anything like that. But it's just...
And to your point, the addiction, like that, I noticed this was like 18 months ago, and it was Exodus 90 that really kicked it. I love Mexican food, dude. I could eat it Monday through freaking Sunday, and every single meal. And I would go, like, I have my spots all along the valley because I travel for, you know, my job. Yeah. Daily, not necessarily overnight. And I literally would just, every lunch, it was one meal after another. And when you try and cut that out, like cold turkey, your body is literally like having like little like withdrawals of like, I really want this.
Absolutely.
Because it's crap. And your body's like, no, I need that fix. I need that fix because you've conditioned me to do this. You know, it's crazy. And when you finally do it, you're like, oh, this is so freeing. There's a release of like, I'm not chained to this, you know, like these spots that I hit up.
Yeah. So. No, I definitely hit. There was, the cravings were bad at first because the whole thing started. My wife in 2022. Her birthday's in September, and her brother is very active, and he does a lot of the Spartan races. He was like ranked like number 8 for his age group in the country for a while. Like, so he's really good at this stuff, and he enjoys it, and he wants everybody else to do it too. And for her birthday, he's like, "Hey, happy birthday! I got you entry to a half marathon in 6 months." And my wife's not much of a runner, and she's like, "This is ridiculous. Who does this?" I'm like, "I'm not a runner. Like, you get yourself that for your birthday, you know." But try to make her feel better. I was like, "Look, I'll enter the same half marathon, and I'll run it with you." Yeah. Which the look she gave me, like, kind of was like an eye opener. Like, she knew that I was not in condition to run that. She was kind about it. She didn't specifically say that, but we've been married for a long time. I knew what her eyes were saying. And
what kind of condition were you in at the time?
Like I said, I'm not sure weight-wise what I was at my heaviest, but it was probably around there. 220 plus. I know when I first weighed myself, I had already lost some weight, and I weighed at 220. So I was over 220. And
230, 240. Yeah.
I was not very active, just active enough for work, you know.
Well, and for the listener, let's give context. How tall are you, Charles?
I'm 5'7".
Yeah. So 5'7", 230, 240. Call it, you know, but
not a lot of muscle tone,
right?
To make excuses for that. No, I was chunky. Yeah. And you know, I had an active job at the time. I was in the field. I built transmission towers and stuff like that. So I had that kind of, you know, ability,
the dad strength,
but not enough muscle tone to make up for that weight. And anyway, so I definitely wasn't running anywhere. But
if you got chased, it wasn't going to work out well either.
Between the way she looks at me when I said I would run it with her, and the entry fee, the cost, like the literal money that it cost to enter that half marathon, I was like, I have to make this work. Like, I need to prove her wrong. There's a lot on
the line for that.
I need to prove her wrong, and this stupid race was over $100, so I'm not going to get there in 6 months and not be able to run it. So I'll never forget my first run. I was traveling, so I was out in the bay in Fremont, and there was this Lake Elizabeth. It's like a little pond, man-made pond in the middle of the city, and it has a 2-mile track around it. 2 miles. And I'm thinking, I was in the military. I ran all the time. I could go run 2 miles. Well, I hadn't run in a long time. Yeah. And I went out, and I was running that at, like, I don't know, 9-minute pace, which sounds okay, but I didn't last very long at that pace. And then I ended up like a 12-minute pace, and I was just kind of cruising around. And before I got to like halfway, my shins were hurting so bad, like I could barely pick up my legs, like everything was hurting so bad. And I was like, there's no way I can do this, like I can't even get a mile, you know, halfway around this lake. And I walked it out and finished, and like I was like, I couldn't roll, like my foot, like everything was just hurting so bad. And I called my wife, and I was like, I did it, but I am hurting. And then the next day at work, I hurt all day. But something about this time, you know, the next day after work, I was like, I'm going to go do it again, you know. And I did it again, and it just I started a pattern, man. And that day I was like, I got to fix the diet. I got to do everything. So I just, you know, the internet's your friend if you want it to be. Yeah. And I just started researching every day, all like the spare time that I had being in a hotel. You know, I was just researching my diet. I was researching exercise. How do I get started? How do I stop, you know, having headaches? How do I do that? And it just became a new addiction, you know, the idea of dropping the things that weren't good for me and finding the things that were.
That's awesome, because I don't know if you listen to Pints with Aquinas. We talk about it all the time on the show, but we were talking about the Jordan Peterson.
It's like we're groupies.
I know. Matt really should pay us for how much we plug his show.
No shame, Matt. You should give us a little
At least buy us Shure mics. We'll take that. No, but so I don't know. Have you listened to or did you listen to the one with Jordan Peterson last week?
No, not last week. No.
Okay, well, he had Jordan Peterson on it, and they were talking about, and I know this is different from what you're talking about right now, but Matt does a lot of work with like anti-porn, and he was asking him like, how do you what would you say to a guy who's trying to basically give that up? And Peterson was like, you don't just quit something, like you replace it with something else, and I was just like, damn, like that's so true.
Yeah.
Because anytime we try to just drop something, it's like we naturally and we end up going back to it.
Yep.
So you saying like you replace all the crap with the addiction to now being addicted to healthy, eating and research, and it just reminded me of that.
Yeah, it's a really, really valid point, because I've failed every diet out there, every fad diet that they say you'll drop a bunch of weight on. I've tried them and failed them, and you're like, how long am I going to do this diet? It's until I get to this weight, I'm going to do this diet, and then you fall off of it, and you go back into your habits and everything like that. But I had to tell myself, like, this isn't to get to this half marathon and be able to run it. This is to essentially this is to save my life. In a sense, I want to be around long enough for my kids, to graduate high school and to play with my grandkids and things like that. And the route I was going, I wasn't going to be around for that.
Yeah.
And, I have a history, family history of, some weight-caused issues, but issues that don't have anything to do with weight, and that you can combat with a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. And it's like, why did it take me so long to make that connection? I don't know, but I made that connection finally, and it became what I replaced the bad habits with. I've figured out, this isn't a diet. I have to make this a lifestyle change. And so when I decided I was going to drop sugar, it wasn't, I'm going to drop sugar until I get to this weight. It's, I'm going to drop sugar.
Yeah.
And so I started looking at every single box, and oh my gosh, I tell you what, every box that, pretty much every box says sugar, has sugar on it. But
or some form of sugar.
Yeah, some form of it. And,
or something that's going to turn into sugar.
Exactly.
That's the big one that one catches.
That was the other thing. It was like processed carbs and, breads and pastas and stuff like that, all the delicious food, but dropping those two things and trying to develop this running habit, it took a while, but it eventually became one of those things where it was just like, that was what was driving me now. The feeling better was driving me, instead of like the first couple weeks of cravings, getting past that and getting to the point where it's like, I'm starting not to crave this stuff anymore. I'm starting to walk by, the produce section and be like, oh my gosh, this stuff looks so good. And, where it used to be walk by the bakery section and be like, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And now, when my wife and, everybody's talking about what do we want for dessert, and that's like, my kids are following along. It's like, can we just get fruit? And it's like, awesome. It changes the whole household. It's pretty awesome.
What's interesting about what you said is that the motivation of another, right? So like, you were recognizing, I could potentially not be around for my kids or my wife.
Yeah.
That's a huge, that should be, right? In theory, that should be every man's motivator.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of what we do for work, like everything that we do should always be for the other, right? It goes back to the last episode we did, right? We lose sight of the fact that like our health is also in that same arena, right? Because it means that it's also, so it is serving them, because it means, to what you pointed out, I'm balanced, or I'm moderate in all areas of my life, right? But then conversely, we're also setting this model for our children of, this is what our in our humanity, what we're called to, as well as in our divinization, right? Like what we're called to for the crown of glory in heaven is to be the model of what it means to be a moderate person, right? So again, the hardest battle You've already alluded to it. Manny's this way. I know I am this way. Rick, I know you are in some areas, but it's like we're really good at extremes. The human condition's really good at like saying, I don't want to do any of this, zero of it, or I'm going to go 100% on this. But guess what the hardest battle is? It's to moderate and say, okay, what's right down the middle, following this path where I'm not going too far to the right and too far to the left, where I actually have to make decisions on. It's okay to have this every once in a while.
Yeah. Knowing
full well that if I open that door, all of a sudden I'm exposing my body again to something, that craving, but then I have to reel it back in and go, no, okay. It's okay to have a little bit of this. Now we're going to go this direction with the opposite, whatever the opposite is, to make sure that we course correct.
Balance.
Yes. Yeah.
Balance is so difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I said earlier, like the internet could be your friend. You know, you talked about porn, and Matt Fradd does a lot for that community and stuff like that. But something I've found out is like how to trick the algorithm on Instagram and Facebook and stuff to have it work for me. And the last like 18 months have been a little bit better on that side of things, because I see things that are motivating to me. I see things that help me make the right decisions when it comes to diet, when it comes to my wife and kids, when it comes to church and everything like that. I've twisted it to where it works for me instead of against me.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've seen a few times is, you know, every father, regardless of like, you know, race or creed or religion or anything, has made some sort of statement like, oh, I would die for my kids. You know, that's it's so easy to say because we all would.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I've seen so many times that's been motivating to me is, but would you live for them?
There you go.
And that's something I tell myself on a daily basis. When if I have a day where I don't want to run, or I walk by a chocolate cake and I'm like, I'm going to eat that whole damn cake. Or something like that. You know, I remind myself, it's like, I would die for my kids, absolutely.
But
I would take a bullet for them, but I want to live for them, and that's what I have control over.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm at a mall someday and somebody starts shooting, I'm not going to have to think about that. I'm going to make sure that I'm there, and I'll protect my kids with my life. But the easier or the harder thing is day to day.
Yeah.
Every single day I have to make that decision. It's like, I'm going to live for my kids, you know?
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest motivator overall. You know, I'm competitive, don't get me wrong. If I know a race is coming up, like this Saturday I have a 5K. 5K is not a very long race, but I want to run it fast.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be the fastest guy out there.
And that's the competitive side
that's
of you.
The competitive side
I know
of me.
I can keep this pace.
But that won't keep me doing all of it. That won't keep me, you know, choosing an apple over the chocolate cake. That won't keep me doing it. What keeps me doing it is I want to live for my kids. And I've told my wife a few times, it's like, I want to have grandkids and I want to be out on the, you know, football field sprinting against them, you know, until you can beat grandpa, you know.
Or hey, let's go charge this hill. Let's see who makes it up top.
Yeah. It's like that cheesy saying as well. How long are you going to borrow from tomorrow for today?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is, but it's also really cheesy when you've heard it a lot.
It's cheesy, but sometimes the cheesiest ones are the best, man. They make the most sense.
Oh yeah. And they're good they're easy to remember.
Yeah. How many times did I do that as a teenager with like living the right way, like making the right choices? Be like, I'll be good later. You know, I have time.
Oh, that's the excuse that I told myself.
Yeah.
I have so much time.
Yeah.
You know, it's like looking back, like, you're such an idiot. Gosh. All right. Anything else up on the wake up routine? We're still on the wake up.
That was the wake up routine?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Thank you. How many times have you been pulled over or interacted with the police?
Oh, man. So many. Too many.
Take a stab at a couple.
There's a good story here. I've probably been pulled over 8 times or so, maybe 10. Speeding tickets mostly.
Yeah.
First time I was pulled over, I was 16. I had my driver's license for like 3 weeks, working my first job, and I was delivering pizzas, and you know, just driving stupid. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Yosemite Lakes Park. Yeah, that's where my parents were living at the time. That's where I live now. But I was delivering pizzas in there, and I was passing people. Like, I'm getting paid by the hour. Like, I look back now, 16-year-old me was an idiot. But that's not the good story. But I
Passing people on a 2-lane road. I love it.
So stupid.
And it's like 35.
Well, it's 35, and I'm coming around. I'm talking with my hands on a podcast. How smart is that? But I'm coming around a turn, and I'm passing on the outside of the turn, and the car that's coming towards me is a CHP. So I had to like rip it back. I made eye contact with him. I knew it was coming.
You're like, oh man, we're done.
But yeah, I would say probably like 10 times. Got probably 4 or 5 tickets in those 10 times. I'm a pretty smooth talker. But the most noteworthy time was I was a young airman, and I was leaving a midnight shift, right?
Okay.
So it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and my flight chief, my staff sergeant, it was in front of me on his bike, on his motorcycle, and I was in my wife's Honda, and he was getting on the on-ramp, and an Acura came around me on the on-ramp, passed me on the on-ramp, got behind him, and then started passing him on the right and forcing him into traffic on a motorcycle.
Oh shoot!
And I'm like witnessing this, and I'm like, what an idiot! He's gonna kill my my sergeant. And so I get my Batman hat on, and I was like, I'm gonna teach this guy a lesson. So like he's flying down the freeway. This is on the 144th down here. So I'm getting on 168. And he's flying. He's probably going like 90, 95. Jeez. So I do like 120 to catch up to him. And I get in front of him and I brake check him like down to like 45. Like really, really slowed him down. And I'm looking in my rearview mirror and I'm like making faces at him and stuff like that. And I didn't know at the time, but my flight sergeant had come back up on his bike and got next to him and was like hitting his window. I'm not really paying attention enough to notice it, but he's like hitting his window and yelling at him and stuff, and then I see him ride by me.
Air Force coming out in force.
Both of us in uniform, like just not the way to act, right?
Ooh,
not the way to
that's
act.
a problem.
I'm out now. I can tell this story, but so then I see my flight sergeant passes me, and he goes on with his day, and I go on with my day, but the dude stays behind me for like a long time. Like I go from 180 to 41, and I'm heading north to Coursegold. And the dude finally disappears after a few miles, and I get out of Fresno, by Valley Children's, where it starts to bottleneck back into 2 lanes when you leave and you're in Madera. And as I get there, I notice in my rearview mirror there's a CHP, and he's coming up on me hot. Ooh. And I was like, there's no way this is related. Like, this was all the way back by the airport. I'm all the way north of Fresno. I was like, no way.
Did the dude seriously call?
Yeah.
Gosh dang.
So I'm watching this CHP behind me who flies up. Like, he had plenty of time to pass me, and he didn't. Yeah. So here I am, a young military cop, like, all right, so this is definitely me. Mm-hmm. And then coming southbound on 41, another CHP passes me, locks up the brakes, and turns around and gets behind me. And I was like, okay, this is not normal procedure.
This is not
I was
good.
like, what is going on? So then I get to 22 Mile House, and another one does the same thing, comes southbound, flips around, gets behind me. So I was like, I'm pulling over. Like, no lights or anything yet. It's like they were getting enough people to pull me over.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just going to pull over. This is obviously for me. I'm going to end this, figure out what's going on.
De-escalate
the situation, right. And I pull over, and there's like a little country road across from 22 Mile House, which is like that last gas station you see. Yeah. And so I pull over, and before I can do anything, the lead officer freaking like comes to a screeching halt, throws his door open, and pulls out his gun on me. Full on felony stop on me.
Wow.
And so he starts yelling orders at me, and I mean, me and my wife, I was a senior airman, which doesn't make a lot of money. So like we have this car that's like a junker, and I can't even roll down the window because it's broken. And he's like yelling at me to roll down the window, and I'm yelling back at him, I can't. And it's just like I'm all stressed out.
Gunfire.
I'm all stressed out about it because it's like I'm also law enforcement, and I'm thinking like, what would I be doing in this scenario? This dude, I don't know what was called in,
Yep.
And so he tells me to open the door, and I take the keys out, and he's like, throw them out, and I'm like chucking them into the weeds. And by the time they challenged me out of the vehicle and they had me come back and they put me in handcuffs and turned me around, there was 8 officers back there.
What?
8 units, like 6 CHP and 2 Madera County sheriffs. And I was at gunpoint on all of them.
Wow.
Locked me up, put me in new bracelets, and searched me. Then a bunch of them went up and searched my car, like throwing everything out of my car.
Sure.
And I was like, can I ask why I'm being detained?
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll get to that. And good 5 minutes went by of them searching my car. Obviously, I didn't have anything. They're like, why are you in uniform? And I was like, I'm a cop in the military. Yeah. I was like, I'm security forces at the 144th. They're like, where's your duty weapon? I was like, we turn them in at the end of the day. I don't take it home with me. Yeah. We're not civilian cops.
And you guys should know this.
Yeah. And so they were like, were you in an altercation on the freeway? And I was like, yeah. And I explained everything to him to detail. Like told him how fast I went.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm not hiding anything from you. And they're like, at what point did you pull your gun? I was like, at no point. At 0 point did I pull a firearm.
There's no gun in the car. Yeah.
And so this dude, whatever, got pissed off and he called the cops and said that me and another, military dressed, man were harassing him on the freeway with firearms and stuff.
Wow.
They took a little bit of information from me and kind of apologized for how they handled it. And I was like, no, I get it. I mean, you guys are trying to handle the situation.
Yeah, you're taking what you're dealt.
Yeah. But it was funny. I guess halfway through the traffic stop, I'm getting handcuffs. My buddy pulls up with his mom.
Oh no!
And they recognize the car and they see me getting handcuffed. And I guess he pulls over like he's going to do something. And his mom gets out of the truck. His mom gets out of the truck and yells at the officers that are handcuffing me. He's a good Catholic boy. And they're like, get back in your car.
That's going to go over real nice, lady.
Oh, he's Catholic? All right, everybody stop. It was so funny. And they called my wife.
No. They would have been like, handcuff his ankles too.
Yeah. What crime family? Yeah. Wow. I guess they went and called my wife.
Wow.
At the time we were, I don't know, we call yourselves newlyweds for a couple years. At the time we were newlyweds and she thinks my buddy's name is Cutter. She's like, stop messing with me. Like, that's not happening right now. Yeah. But yeah, totally fact.
That's wild.
It was wild. Yeah. The lead officer's name was Matty Shack. I'll never forget it.
Matty Shack.
Matty Shack. Yeah.
Favorite movie was Caddyshack.
Yeah. But that was my most wild interaction with law enforcement. Other than a lot of training. I did a lot of training with a lot of the local law enforcement. Being National Guard, we had a lot of opportunities to train with CHP. We trained with Fresno PD, Fresno County Sheriff. We did a lot of that, but that's not as fun.
That's no joke, dude. 8 officers total, all weapons drawn.
Yeah,
That'll get you.
I remember the first one I made eye contact with when they turned me around had his 12 gauge out, and I was like,
12 gauge, wow.
Oh.
A little excessive.
One wrong move.
Oh man!
Like I'm doing everything these guys tell me, even if I have to dance.
The barrel roll.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else along those lines?
No, it doesn't get any better.
Okay, that was great. All right. What's your greatest accomplishment or achievement to date?
Man, I got to go with successful marriage.
Yeah.
These days, it's not a common thing. I mean, I think I'm sitting in a group of guys that have probably achieved that, and I'm thankful for you guys because the world needs more of it. I think the nuclear family is under attack for sure, and we've had our struggles. Like I said, we've been married 17 years this year, and I'm 37, so I was young. She was a little bit younger. She was 18 and I was 20 when we got married. And the odds were against us, for sure. Had a baby on the way on wedding day. Yeah. Made some decisions and had some consequences, and life happened fast. And did not think we were going to make it to here, but God willing. And talk about accomplishments. Everything that I've gone through with that woman. Everything is attached to that. Yeah. The success that I've had in marriage is the success I've had in life.
Wow.
Absolutely. And, my wife's a convert. She wasn't raised Catholic. They make the best Catholics.
Yep.
We shopped around a little bit as newlyweds. I wasn't, I was pretty solid in my faith at 20. Not solid enough, obviously, but I didn't want to force her in anything. I wanted her to kind of make that choice, and we went to a couple churches. She started going to Holy Spirit with me when we were just dating. It was the first church service that she went to in a lot of years, because when she turned like 10, her parents were like, if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. You know, they're non-denominational. I think they went to like a Calvary Chapel type church, but didn't make her go, didn't force anything on her. And, you know, kids are going to, I don't have to sit in church for an hour on Sunday. No, I don't want to go. So that was kind of her take on Christianity. And so bringing her to church with me when we were just dating was kind of a big deal. And she kind of took a liking to that. But wasn't 100% on the Catholic, bus. But we went to a couple different services, and she just kept saying, it doesn't feel right. Nothing feels home like going to church with you when we were dating. It just felt like home. I felt very accepted. I brought her to adoration a couple times, and
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I thought I was going to scare her off, to be honest, and I think that was a little bit of a technique on my part, unknowingly. Yeah. Subconsciously, I think I was giving her a little bit of a test in where she was at mentally, because the girls I had dated, the two girls prior to her, were both Catholic. Not very good ones, but they were Catholic. But no, she was always very willing to come check stuff out, and Holy Spirit was a good church for that, because it was a little bit more upbeat. The church I grew up in was an old people church, and that's where we're at now. Yeah. I went back up there when our kids were getting closer to Sunday school age, and we wanted a smaller community, but neither here nor there. But yeah, I can't think of anything greater than a successful marriage.
That's literally been, I think, obviously every guest other than if we've had religious, right? So like, Father Jacob, we didn't actually do background on him. His was more topic oriented, right? But Father Michael, obviously. But I saw this quote, and I forget which saint it is. I need to find these quotes and actually put them in the notes. But the greatest war is that in marriage. And it was cool because it's the framework. I forget the next few sentences, but essentially it was, together you're warring against culture. Yeah. Right. To your point. So there's this unification, but then it was also, you war so that you achieve the crown, right? So it's like a good marriage means that we're constantly in love and charity, and in truth and charity, challenging each other to be the better version of ourselves that we're meant to be, to achieve, again, the crown, right? Yeah. It's like, if you're not actually being challenged in your marriage, and there isn't some fighting going on, right? If there isn't a little bit of like, hey, like, you need to be more humble, and then conversely looking in the mirror and going, oh, I suck, then that, yeah. No,
that's I've had so many friends that have been had the gall to like challenge me on whether or not I know what I'm missing. I don't know if you've gotten that. Yeah. My wife's the only woman I've ever been with. And I'm thankful for that. And
I'm not missing anything.
How do you know? How do you know that there's not something else out there? And it's like, how many times have you been divorced? Like, most of my buddies that are like that are either in and out of marriage or have never been married, or But there's this sense of, the lack of thought process of what is important in that relationship, and I try to explain it in the sense of, me and my wife have been together since I was just out of high school. She was still in high school, and it's been going on. It's been over 18 years, almost 19 years that it's been just us. Yeah. But I have not just dated my high school girlfriend. I've been with so many different women, in a sense of we have grown up together. Yes. Yeah. We have changed into different people countless amount of times. So it's like, call it variety if you want, but it's like I've had a little bit of variety in this woman that I committed to, and we were kids when we got married, and we grew up together, and we're continuing to grow up together. I just sent her a text the other day where it's like, we go through seasons in our relationship, and I'm in a season right now where I'm falling in love with you again, because we went for for 15 years I was in the military and TDYs and deployments and stuff like that, and we were gone, and we had to deal with a relationship that fought those battles.
Yeah.
And then after I got out of the military and I started working at this small local utility company and I traveled for work, I was gone for a couple weeks, to a month at a time. And we had to challenge those battles. And last October, I moved into this new position where I have a home office, and it didn't take long where we had the most consecutive nights together in our entire marriage.
Yeah.
Like it was again another relationship. It was a new relationship that we were learning, and we were, figuring out things about each other. That many years into marriage, and you do those things and you adapt to those things. Well, when you start those marriages at that young age, everybody talks about young marriages not lasting and stuff, and I to the contrary, if you fall for somebody and God puts it in front of you that this person is meant for you, there's a reason you're falling at that young age, because growing together is so important, so pivotal, because you get to these points where if you were set in your ways, say you got married at 35, 36, I know a lot of guys that are in their 40s that haven't quite found the right one yet. You're so set in your ways that adapting, that challenging yourself to change is not going to happen the way it does that you do when you're early in your 20s or late teens or something like that. You're willing to grow and change and adapt, and you do it together, and it's a beautiful thing. And I don't get me wrong, I've taken it for granted way too many times. But
totally.
Man,
and we will continue to, right? Like that's the and not I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying that's the reality. Is it's not perfect, but I think the cool thing about what you said too is that it's awesome. Jamie and I were just having this conversation, I think Friday or Saturday, where we continue also to understand ourselves differently, right? Like marriage is such a good mirror of who we are, right? Like when someone that you've known, we've just passed our 15 year, right? We were right behind you guys in terms of marriage. Manny's in 17? You guys were married 19. There we go.
3 months.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, technically with the convalidation.
I'm sorry, I had to call you out.
That was awesome.
One thing about we just got convalidated our marriage in January this year.
Oh, okay.
But my dad gave a speech thank you. My dad gave a speech at the reception, and it was exactly about what you were just speaking to. That you continue dating and you continue to fall in love with another person. It starts with that young girl, then you fall in love with the mother. You fall in love with the the woman. He said now he's falling in love with her grandma. Yeah. But it's awesome that you've grasped that wisdom already. I think they just did 30 years. So
yeah.
Like to your point, like there's only so much you can hide in marriage.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that intentionally. I'm saying everything comes out. Eventually it comes out.
Yeah.
And to your point, either you run away from it, right? Which is most of the guys that are bouncing from marriage to marriage. It's like I can't let this out of the bag. I'm out. I don't want to reveal this part of myself, right? I would argue that's typically what's going on.
Absolutely.
Right?
Until you can be 100% vulnerable.
Boom.
And that's when real marriage success comes out. When you can take out that dirty laundry that only you know about. And I think a lot of the time, like speaking from experience, a lot of the time it's pornography. Yep. And it's like I had that struggle bad.
Or sexually related.
Or sexually related.
Yeah, sexually related.
Yeah.
Where it's like, dude, like this is something that's been in the back for a long time, or not so long, but now if I don't address this, then this is just going to fester and continue to cause problems. You're going to see a side of me that you don't like. You're not going to want to be around. Yeah, because I'm choosing to throw in the towel every time I don't share it with you. Yeah,
burying a lie like that is just it's damaging to you. It's damaging to the marriage, and you're never going to have that success. And like it was, It's something that a lot of people struggle with, and they don't talk about it to anybody. Yeah. Nobody. And the person that you should be able to talk to about is
that person. Yeah. That's why they've been given to us, and we've been given to them. And I think in all the dirty laundry, but it's also the beautiful vulnerability that really we're not meant to share with anyone else, right? That person should be the one that it's like, this is for you and I, because we're one, right? And that's it, and they see it, and they love you still because of it, right? Or they fall more in love with you, and you're just like, I don't know why you would want to love that, but okay. Again, not that it's like a bad thing or a sinful thing, but it's just like, this is totally like not what I would imagine you would be attracted to in a man, right? Like speaking as men, but it's like, no, that's the part that, like, as the woman, they're going, no, I know that's in there. That's what I saw when we first got married. I saw a glimmer of it. I just didn't know to what depth it went. Right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm an emotional person.
Totally.
Like, in every spectrum.
Yeah.
Anger, happiness, passion all the time. Everything's passionate. My mom talks about it from when I was little. I wore all my emotions way out on my sleeves, and my wife knew that about me from early on. But it's like there's certain parts of that where I feel like I needed to like tuck certain things away. Like I can be emotional in front of my wife now, but like there was a lot of times where it's like I feel like I need to be strong and I can't, show that fear or anything like that. But she's made me feel so comfortable through the years that it's just like there's no part of me that I want to hide from her anymore, And the struggles were the years where I felt like I needed to hide parts of me because it wasn't right, or Father Jacob said something to me when he was here. Where people start to think, instead of I'm doing something wrong, I am wrong. I've done something wrong. Going from that thought process to I am wrong is where you start having those problems where it's like you beat yourself up to the point where it's like you put yourself at risk of taking any type of healing away, because once you start to think that you are wrong, you don't think you can change it. I've done something wrong is easy. Yeah. I've done something wrong is,
He alluded to something like that when he sat down with us.
Oh yeah.
We often make shame and guilt synonymous, and he's like, you absolutely should feel guilt.
Yeah.
You should never feel shame. And his comment to that was almost identical to what you said, in terms of like the whole point of guilt is to turn us back towards God.
Right.
It's always meant for us to go, this is why I need you, right? The shame is going, I'm unworthy of that. I'm less than what you created me as I am. Not necessarily who I'm meant to be, but even now, even in this, if it's mortal sin, if I'm in mortal sin, you still love me.
Yeah.
Just because I've turned away from you doesn't mean that you don't still love me in this, right? So it's this cool, like, it was cool hearing this, because I bought into that lie for a long time, and hearing him say it that way was like, oh, there's a difference, right? That they're not synonymous words.
Right.
So
that's good.
Yeah. Anything else on achievement, accomplishment?
I don't think so.
All right.
We're on question 3.
No, we're on 4.
20.
That's why it's called Not So Lightly.
Good, yeah. Good. All right. What is your greatest struggle with being Catholic?
Being Catholic.
Authority.
Oh man, my greatest struggle with being Catholic.
That's a response. You don't have to elaborate on that.
That really is. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? The struggle is just living that Christ-like expectation, right? I mean, it's hard, right? We hold ourselves accountable to a sense. We try to surround ourselves with people that hold us accountable, and it's waking up. It's like the thing that you can do every day, or the thing that you do because of one event or things like that. It's the daily, right? It's the daily. Be a good person today. Yeah.
Or just right now.
Or right now. This exact moment.
I don't know if I can focus on the next hour even.
Yeah. And it's something I was encouraged recently by a priest we all know to go to confession more. And he said, once you start making a habit of really, really repetitive confession, you get to the point where everything that you do starts to go through a different filter, right? The thought process of how I'm going to react to this statement or that car that pulled in front of me, or what my kids just did, that was stupid but really meaningless. It's so true, right? And I had never gone to confession with my parish priest. It was like one of those those situations where it's like I teach there. My wife is the director of religious education there. It's like, I don't want to tell him my bad stuff, And I was going through with my students right before confirmation, 2 days before confirmation, and they're all going through and doing their confession. And I was like, "Hey, Father, you got time for one more?" And he look on his face was like, "You've never come to confession here." I was like, "You're not supposed to know that." But no, it was like one of those things where it's like I humble myself to that thing that I was just afraid of because of silly reasons. But that's really it. Being Catholic is the hardest struggle of being Catholic, and trying to be a good Catholic, and a faithful Catholic, and trying to evangelize when I see the opportunity to evangelize. And I don't know. It's hard to have a better answer than that. I'm trying to be better.
Yeah. I forget who said this. It was recent, but I think it might have been Fred as well. Gosh, we need him to freaking kick us. Anyways, the comment was, I think it was a convert. It was a Protestant that, when asked initially about like different denominations, he was like, "Oh, the Catholics are like the Navy SEALs of Christianity." And I was like, I like that. That's really cool. Like the dudes that it's like, oh, they take like discipline to a whole different, it's in order to practice, you have to have you're kind of weird and off,
that's just it. Is the one thing I've always said is, like, when I get asked by friends that are Protestant, or rarely am I getting asked by people that are considering Catholicism, but it's like, why, why Catholic? And I was like, I don't know, because the church has a backbone, and I feel like there's a stance that's taken on certain things, and it's not influenced by what our numbers are on Sunday, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, that's how it is. And you go back to the early church, and we try to, obviously a lot's changed, and I think there's an overwhelming feeling that there's some things that we should go back a little bit on, but we've tried to stay pretty consistent, as a church as a whole, and men through the years have made mistakes and stuff like that, but I'm not Catholic because of a priest. I'm not Catholic because of a specific pope. I'm Catholic because of Jesus Christ. And Amen. I think that's a hard thing to say to a lot of people that are Protestant, because the idea is that we went wrong along the years, and it was wrong. It makes me laugh, because I feel like if Jesus Christ established our church, who are you? What's the name of the guy that established your church?
Zwingli? Luther?
Luther.
Siri has a good answer for those.
Was he digging in America? Because we all saw how that went. But no, it's that's what it falls back to, is like, I'm a historical type of guy. Like, I like the history of things, and I like, when you get something right, stay right.
Yeah. Well, what's awesome about what you said too is too often I've caught myself kind of doing I'm Catholic, right? Or in the same breath, like when asked by, let's say at work, someone that's Protestant, the concept of a relationship with Jesus Christ and Catholicism doesn't seem like, it seems like a dichotomy to them, right? It's like, no, you just follow a bunch of rules. You actually don't like have a relationship and follow
fake news.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is when you can literally be like, no, I'm Catholic and I have a beautiful relationship with Jesus Christ. Yeah, and all of a sudden they're like, what? Wait a second.
Exactly.
Like how does this translate? And it's like, and it's a testament to. It's probably more likely that they've never run into a actually practicing Catholic.
Yeah, no, 100%. And
that's what that testament says.
Yeah,
it's sad.
The guys that I've had time enough to talk to. There's this one guy. He's probably going to listen to this because I was telling him about it. His name's Harry, and
shout out to Harry.
He's a Protestant, and he's a good man, one of the best men I know. And we've had so many talks like about why we believe this, why we believe that, and we align on almost everything, right? And you know, he's come straight out and been like, why Catholic, man? Why Catholicism? Like all of these things, and you know, he genuinely wants to know, like, why do you choose that? And we've had enough conversations that he's been like, dude, I've never heard a Catholic talk like you before. I've never heard a Catholic like quote scripture. I've never heard a Catholic talk about a one-on-one relationship with Jesus Christ being the number one thing in their life, you know. And I'm like, that's because people don't, like, there's a lot of bad Catholics out there that they're Catholic because they were a cradle Catholic and they go to church on Christmas and Easter and they just, you know, you're Catholic like a lot of people are Jewish, you know, and I think there's a genuine misconception about real Catholics out there, and it's so easy to correct that misconception with like 20 minutes of conversation, if that. If that.
It's like, well, let me back up. I believe that I get to actually receive my God, not just every Sunday, but every day of the week, if I choose so. How much more intimate can I get? And then that sets a whole weird trajectory of conversation, because they're like, wait, you actually believe that? Yes. To my core.
This is what I told.
There's no other place I can go. If this isn't it, then there's nothing else.
Then we're horribly wrong.
Yes, exactly.
I told Harry one time, because I was talking about communion, and he said, yeah, we do communion at our church like once a month or something like that. And the way he was describing it was very similar to how I feel when I'm going up to receive communion. And I was like, yeah, I'm receiving Christ. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, so you, as a Protestant, you're having an understanding that you're receiving Christ in the flesh. Yeah. And I was like, dude, you should be Catholic. Because if you have the faith to believe something like that, to understand that is possible,
you're halfway there.
That's and
I mean, shoot, 90%.
We
well, they're still married. That's a big one for a lot of
Mary's. That's a pretty big
30%, because papacy is always an issue.
Papacy is like a lot of people's last issue. Speaking of Matt Fradd and people he's had on, but neither here nor there. But he's I'm not saying he's going to be Catholic, and he's probably going to listen to this and be like, Charles thinks I'm going to be Catholic. He might someday. I don't know.
And this, I need to reiterate this. We love our Protestant brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. And every parish priest that I've had has incorporated Protestants and the word Protestant in that exact same way, like you just said it. Our Protestant brothers and sisters. There's been a few times where I've gone to different people's churches for a wedding or an event or something like that, or I'm just out of town and I'm, you know, experiencing their church with them because it's a nice thing to do. How often have you been at a Protestant church and it's just a target on your back as a Catholic? And it's like, what happened to the family portion of this Christianity, you know? And I've tried to, like, you know, just because since we're talking about Harry in no way is anti-Catholic. He has his questions and things like that, and he has his differences, and that's all well and good. He's very willing to listen, and as I am to him. But there's a consensus that Catholics think they're right and everybody else is wrong, and Catholics don't know anything about Catholicism for the most part, and a lot of that's true. But I've always been around the types of priests that use that term, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and that's absolutely how I feel. If Judgment Day was tomorrow, you know, I'm not thinking like, oh, where's the line for Catholics because we're the only ones getting in. You know, I can't. You know,
well, and to your point, I think that there are plenty of Protestants that are so close, and yet they don't have any clue how close they are to what the church teaches, right? Not necessarily what they see people practicing or not practicing, right? But like how close it is. And to our point, it is a very large chasm, you know, to jump, right? In terms of, but then also now even someone as open as Harry, you know, using Harry as an example, versus someone that has been like in the Baptist realm of things, where they've been downloaded, where Catholicism is the Antichrist, right? The Pope, any Pope, you know, from basically beyond Peter, and they don't even acknowledge Peter as a pope. They just, like gloss over that. Again, speaking of history, it's like, it just skipped, and then by 1600 we figured this out. It's like, well, okay. Anyways, you get where I'm going with that. Yeah, it's like it's one thing to be open to it and not really know. It's another thing to be sold a bill of goods about what Catholicism is, and then all of a sudden have to like unwind a bunch of lies that you've been fed your whole life. And then you're like, oh, you don't believe that? No, we don't believe that. That's not even, like that's something to keep you from actually digging into our faith, right? You know?
I have my oldest sister might be a Baptist.
Okay.
She definitely won't listen to this, but her and her husband were married in the Catholic Church by request of my parents.
Okay.
He was very willing to raise their kids Catholic until kids came around. But it's just, if you take my family as a whole, I'm one of 6. I have one brother and 4 sisters. Me and my brother are the only practicing Catholics with our families. My parents, about the best Catholics you can find. They raised us very well. They were it was from a religious standpoint and an educational standpoint, they made sure we got what we needed about the church. We were not CEO Catholics. We went every Sunday. It was priority. And we didn't just do the sacramental years. We went to the in-between years with catechesis, and it was a really, really good upbringing, as close to perfect as you can get. And I don't know where I would be without my Catholic faith, and I know it's because of them.
Yeah. And
it just goes to show how important the lead of a household is, right?
Yeah. And
a strong lead of a household at that matter. And I've done so many things wrong in life, in my short life, but thank God He's kept me, in this church, and I've been able to raise my family in this church, and the mistakes I've made and the times I've strayed and everything like that, He's always brought me back, and my kids, my oldest was just confirmed last month, and
congrats,
man.
Yeah,
it's I remember my confirmation like it was yesterday, but I don't think I felt a confirmation like I felt that confirmation of my oldest son.
Nice.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, it was amazing, and not to mention it was my first class. I've been with all of these kids for 2 years.
Wow,
and watching them all get confirmed, and some of them are knuckleheads, but
were you stressed out watching?
It was like we did so much practice and like walked through everything. My wife, being the CRE, she walked through stuff with them too, and like right up until the day of Mass, we did like a quick walkthrough. This is what the bishop's going to look for, and then when getting ready to lay on the hands, everything I've been telling them for 2 years, and Bishop Brennan, I love him. He's I was confirmed when Bishop Steinbach was here.
Same here.
But Bishop Brennan, he's amazing. I really do love him. And he goes up to one of my older students who was the first one in line, and he goes, "Just do it how you guys practice." She goes, "We didn't practice this."
And you're like, what?
Thanks.
Just throw me under the bus.
Yeah. My priest looks over at me like, "Why didn't you practice this?" But anyway, but yeah, I'm just really thankful for my parents, and it's shocking to me that all 4 of my sisters have gone, different routes. One of them maybe doesn't believe anything anymore. I think she's more angry at God than she's willing to admit. So I think it's easier to say I don't believe in God. Yeah. But yeah, my oldest sister's Baptist. My sister that's closest to me in age just stopped going to church altogether, and I think she has a good relationship with Jesus and has a good understanding of that. It's just the rules. The rules bugged her so much because we were just before COVID. Her son was in First Communion, and they wanted all the First Communicants to sit together with their families. And she's like, "Well, I don't want to sit together with the families." And they're like, "Well, this is how we're going to do it." And like little things like that, where it's just like, don't tell me how to come to church, is how she took it. But so she's not going right now. She's still very much a Christian mindset. Just the Catholicism was just too many rules for her, and I think that hits a lot of people.
Yeah,
it hit me when I was younger. They're like, why can't this be this? Like, me and my wife didn't get married in the church because we didn't do things the right way. You know, we were,
I think that's I don't think that's the fault of those that are on the receiving end of that. And I'm going to back up from, I don't think, I know for a fact. It's typically the way that situation is handled is not great.
Thank you.
And because it's not handled well, you end up people disappearing. You know what I'm saying? Like, just going, I'm out. This isn't you're not reflecting the charity that we're all talking about, right? Now, I'm not saying that they, there is nuance there always in every situation, but by and large, I'd say a lot of times it's whoever's giving the message of, hey, this is how we're going to do it, and then they start digging in their heels instead of figuring out, okay, how do I flank this a little bit and try and like put my arm around them and get them, on the same page. They kind of bow up, and I just need you to listen, and I just need you to, do what I'm telling you. And it's like, that typically doesn't work with people, especially adults. It's like when you start bowing up on another adult, it's like, it's not, you're already lost. So
I had to learn a different approach teaching teenagers.
Yeah.
Most of my teenagers called it church school. That's what they called it. Do we have church school next week? And there's a huge gaps in attendance, and with a lot of these kids, like, I didn't see them for years at the church, and all of a sudden, you're confirmation age, and now you're at class. Which, thank God, at any time in your life, I'll take it when you're coming, right? But I learned really quick, they see right through the bullshit. Yeah. Really, really quickly. At that age, it's just like, you can't be fake and phony with them. If you just open up the curriculum. We had great curriculum. It was through Ascension.
Nice.
Not a sponsor.
But we'll take you.
But no kidding, right? If there's one that would send you off good, that'd be the one. But good curriculum. It was really great. Father Mike Schmitz is like,
dude, he's so great.
He's awesome. But it wasn't going to keep him there. Mm-hmm. So it's like the first few months, the first year I was doing it, I had to learn how these kids were going to be approached. And thankfully my son was that age, so he was a huge help because I could kind of bounce things off of him and stuff. And
he was giving you kind of the background of, hey, this is working, Dad, this isn't going to work.
And he was pretty open with it, and I was happy about that. And like a lot of these kids were extreme basics with Catholicism, extreme basics with the Bible. And at 14, 15, 16 years old, in my mind, I'm like, they should know a lot more. They should be at a different place. But it's like, I need to meet them where they're at, or I'm going to lose them. And so just because my kids were a certain place at a certain age, I needed to realize, okay, who's the furthest back? Where do I need to start? How do I need to get these kids interested in this? Which really, I just wanted to keep them coming. Whether it was the parents making them come or not, I just needed to keep them coming. But so I figured out really quickly that honesty was the best thing. Like, I started being brutally honest with them. These kids know like all of my secrets, all the mistakes I made in high school, all the mistakes I made early in life, and that was what kept them interested, because I think there was a sense. I know when I was a teenager, I thought Catholic adults were perfect. That was the only way you could be. You couldn't make mistakes, because if you made mistakes, you weren't a good person. And if you made mistakes, you weren't a good Catholic. And if you made a mistake, you had to run to confession. Whereas I started sharing all those mistakes that I grew up making with them, and it made them listen. They're like, wait a minute, what? You did what? And now you're teaching Sunday school? And it's like, dude, don't even don't compare me teaching Sunday school to anything special. I'm here because we didn't have enough people. You know,
The pool was very limited.
I'm a nobody when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
I just learned the Hail Mary yesterday. No, but that's what really opened them up, and I started doing this thing, the question box, right?
Okay.
And it was literally like a
Did
kid.
you get this from The Office?
No, perfect. I love that show, by the way.
It's a great show.
No, I had like a box from like my night vision from the military, and I cut a hole in the top of it, and I wrote question box on it. And I was like, you guys have questions you don't want to ask out loud, you know, doesn't even have to be church related, just write it in the box at the end of class, we'll go through it. That question box ended up being the biggest like connection point between me and those students, because they would ask the wildest questions that they didn't want to ask out loud, and I could address them in class.
And they could do it anonymously.
Yeah. And they'd ask questions about me, you know, like to the, you know, the point, they're like, did you have sex in high school?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or they would ask, you know, why are we Catholic? Like silly questions about me to like the really core questions.
Yeah.
And it's like they wouldn't do it out loud. They wouldn't answer questions out loud most of the time. It was like talking to a wall. But that question box was how I was able to like really get these kids opening up to like the idea of you're normal. Like everything you're going through, all the thoughts that are going through your head, everybody goes through that. Because I think there is this sense, and when I was talking to Father Jacob at dinner, he was saying, you know, how we all get that idea of we are wrong, not we're doing something wrong. Yeah. And then you start to hide that, like we've talked about with marriage and everything like that. And I had to put myself back to being that teenager, right? And just being able to be completely honest with them and completely upfront, and to a fault sometimes, because it's just like, you know, if they asked me, I was gonna tell them. Yeah. And I made a pretty good relationship, and it was a big class for our church. Like our church is not very big, and I had 15 in my class, and 13 ended up getting confirmed.
Nice.
So it was
how many families in the parish?
Oh gosh, this would be a perfect question for my wife.
If you don't know, no worries. I'm not trying to put you on the
families
spot.
with kids, I think like 45, 50.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's older.
That's a good showing.
It's an older community, like more retired people. We had, I want to say there was like about that many in our first communion class too, maybe a little bit more. Yeah. Pretty big Hispanic community for that area, for the mountains. Like when I was a kid, there wasn't really a Hispanic community up there, but I think I was confirmed with 2 other people.
Yeah. I grew up going to St. Anne's.
Oh, okay.
You probably have bumped into my parents at some point.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unknowingly.
Yeah. I was going to say unknowingly for sure.
But no, I can't remember how we got on that topic, but that confirmation class, I learned a lot from them about teaching and like where our youth is. Yeah. And it's small piece of the pie being in a mountain community like that, but it was pretty eye-opening. Like if things aren't being reiterated at home, it's so tough to do it in the 1 hour a week. Yeah. 7 months out of the year.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. But to your point, it something was sticking. You know,
something.
Like,
I mean, I had a couple that didn't open up until like towards the end of the second year, but the ones that, you know, there was the right questions were being asked, and that's all that mattered. And I kind of opened up to Father Jacob about it, because I was like, dude, should I be recommending some of these kids for confirmation? And he's like, absolutely. And he's like, as long as they're old enough to walk up there. Yep. He's like, what's happening in confirmation is what's important. He's like, it's not where they're at. Yeah. It's what's happening to them when the bishop lays his hands on them and he gives them the gift of the Holy Spirit.
And this is a shameless plug on my part, I know Bishop Brennan is revisiting the age. Yeah. He's been revisiting the age, because Ryan, my oldest, 14, we just had good friends, the Finns, come into the church, right? And so the whole family, and Hezekiah's 8, and he got confirmed. They made like this special circumstance with, you know, what was going on. The bishop gave him like emergency, Father Michael, that is, approval to give Hezekiah confirmation, like all the stuff all at once, right? Okay. And Ryan was like, what, like looking at me like, Dad, what the heck? Why can't I, you know, like get it now? And I said, go talk to Father Michael, like voice your frustration.
Yeah.
And he was like, send a letter. And he was saying, send the letter because the bishop's reviewing it right now. And I'm of the mindset, I think all of us probably are in this mindset. I would have loved to have received it at 8th grade.
Yeah.
Or
does
even
the
before
Vatican
that.
say 7 years old?
It's supposed to, well, I shouldn't say supposed to. A lot of common practice up to basically like modernity, so like 1950, 1960, was you would receive it basically either baptism or like right at the same time that you received First Holy Communion.
Yeah.
So it's like, it makes total sense because you're getting all this influx of grace from especially confession and the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you not pile that on so that all that other grace that you receive in that is going to come to fruition? You might not be an adult mentally and maturity wise, but you're going to have all that grace already flowing to where you're able to absorb a lot of these truths of the faith a lot faster than people that aren't hearing it at home consistently.
And like even if that gift sits dormant, like,
yes.
Like we had a dinner before the confirmation, and I was blessed to be able to sit at the table with the bishop, and we had a lot of good conversation. And I told him, I was like, when I got confirmed, like there was part of me right away that was like, I'm an adult in the church. I could do things now. Like I wanted to be a lector, I wanted to be an EM, I wanted to do all these things, and I was like, I know that's not going to happen with all these students, all these confirmandi today, but I was like, even if that gift sits dormant in them, I know it's there. Mm-hmm. And that's what, brings me a lot of comfort. And he was like really adamant, like that's exactly what, we need to be at that point. We need to look at the fact that these teenagers might not be anywhere where we think they should be or where we want them to be or anything like that, but the gift that they're receiving, that that Holy Spirit is real, and we can't take any accountability for anything that they go through after this, because
the Holy Spirit's God, and He's going to move way beyond what we can understand.
And so it was pretty comforting being able to talk to the bishop and have him say stuff like that, because it's like as the teacher, I've the vanity of like, I hope I did enough. Yeah. I hope I said the right things and stuff. It's like, it's so far out of my hands. Yeah. I'm just there.
Yeah.
that awesome. Comment you mentioned from Father Jacob about what happens, what they're receiving during confirmation. This past Sunday, we celebrated Pentecost Sunday, and Father Michael did a really cool job of tying that together, Pentecost Sunday with confirmation. Yeah. And how we're, that's what we're living on our confirmation is a Pentecost. Yeah. So that was a cool thing that Father Jacob told you, because once they receive that things can really start happening.
Absolutely.
Well, and this the idea, Father Michael's homily too was awesome in that we're literally a mission church. It's in, like, I forget which paragraph of the catechism, right? But, like, as an identity, if we talk about identity as Catholics, I'll put both my hands up. I am right now. It's like I've lost the sense in which we are a mission. We're meant to be in mission mode as a Catholic. Yeah. Right? So the gift of confirmation is meant to give us that flame and that fire to be able to have the conversations with Harry. Yeah. And to do it with confidence, not with arrogance and with, conceitedness, but with a humility and a meekness, but a confidence of, I don't have all the answers, but I know the church does. And her infinite wisdom and love, because of Christ being her bridegroom, it's there. We can figure out what this truth is, right? But again, we let this mature and adult, you said it. We let it lie dormant. We don't rely on it. We don't push to the Holy Spirit and say, I'm confirmed by you. Give me the words, give me the confidence to not necessarily go, to Africa. I'm a mission here, wherever my community is. This is where I'm meant to mission. Yeah. Right? And it might be my coworkers, it might be the people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. And that's really what we're supposed to be doing, right? Mm-hmm. Salt. It's just, we're salting whatever where we're at. So yeah. How are we looking on time?
How many questions do we have?
One.
Let's knock it out.
All right. How are you doing,
I'm
Charles?
good. Okay. This is extremely enjoyable. How often do you get to talk about yourself like this?
All right, so this is supposed to be funny. You mentioned you like The Office. So this is a great question to kind of finish out and take a break. Why are you the way that you are?
Man, I think that the answer to that has changed so many times in my adult life. Why am I the way that I am? Because I'm competitive. That's what it's turned into. I want to be better all the time, and I've figured out a way to challenge myself in different ways, and it's turned into a lot of me against me, and I've found a lot of motivation in that, and because I did a lot of years of comparing myself to other people that I thought were successful, people that I thought were doing things the way I should be doing things, and I finally got to the point where it's me against me, and I find a certain drive in that, with religion and family life and fitness and diet and all these things that I have control over, and I don't know. I guess that's why I am the way that I am right now.
Nice. I like it. That's very Catholic.
Yeah.
The enemy isn't without; it's the enemy within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The enemy is the inner me.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. On that note, let's take a break. Hey guys, Eli here from Circa Ignem. Hope you're enjoying this week's guest so far. Just want to take a quick second to invite you to join our online community on all your social media platforms. We'll be sharing wholesome, Christ-centered content, and you can always stay up to date on the latest news and episodes. Listen, like, comment, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Thank you. And we're back. All right. Where were you born, Charles?
I was born in Long Beach.
Okay.
Southern California, LBC. I like to tell people I know Snoop Dogg.
Is that where he's from?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really, Rick? You didn't know? I'm just kidding. I didn't know that either.
Oh, wow. My beautiful innocent boys.
I was going to go, really? That makes me innocent because I don't know where Snoop Dogg's from.
You can give me some of my favorite people and I won't be able to tell you basic information about them.
I was thinking Sublime, right? They talk about LBC.
Yeah.
All right. So that's where. How long did you live in Long Beach?
Not long. Okay. We moved up to the mountains. I think I was. My parents always say I was less than a year. I think I was like 11 months old. I had 4 older siblings, and they were all in school. And my parents, having a bigger family, they were just like, we need to get our kids out of the city type thing. So my dad was able to transfer in the same company up to Fresno. But then Fresno was still Fresno, so they're like, we want to move further north, and then my dad just commuted. So we moved to Ahwahnee. I don't know how well you know.
Yep. Yeah.
That's even further north than Corsgold.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah, my dad was commuting 53 miles one way. So he'd go out early in the morning, we'd be back late at night, but it was a good spot. We were on 5 acres. We had horses and stuff. For a little while, my parents didn't know how expensive horses were.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, moved up there pretty young. So I was born in Long Beach, but the only memories I have of Long Beach is because my extended family stayed down there for the longest time. So my summer vacations, a lot of the time, were spent down there.
Okay. What's your earliest memory? I'm assuming you don't have any of Long Beach. It has to be. I don't know. Maybe you're going to shock us with, no. I remember coming out of the womb.
No. I have an uncle that swears he remembers opening his eyes for the first time. But
that cocaine, it's one hell of a drug.
Man.
What if he was like, well, it's sad he actually was addicted to coke? How bad would you feel?
I would feel really bad.
His addiction actually took his life.
Oh, man. Let's
Foot and mouth
restart.
disease.
Yeah, restart.
Foot
Can
and
we
mouth
delete?
disease.
Delete.
No, we're live, pal. No.
I would say my earliest memory is probably in the yard in Ahwahnee, hanging from my siblings' feet while they swung on this rope swing. And I would say I was pretty young, because we've talked about this story a few times, and they were like, I was like 18 months old, 2 years old.
Okay.
And I'd sit on their feet and hold on to their ankles, and they would swing each other. And it was like our front yard was on a hill, so at like the bottom side, I'd be like 12, 15 feet in the air, going in a circle, just hanging off of their feet. My mom still says to this day she's surprised I made it. Yeah, growing up with 4 older siblings. They used to play a game called Hide the Baby. Yeah.
We don't need any other explanation.
Yeah.
Self-explanatory.
The dryer, the places my mom would find me.
Okay.
Wow.
So earliest memory is getting swung out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite memory of early childhood specifically?
Early childhood?
Yeah.
Man. That's a good one. Probably just being in the front yard of that house. That house, all of my siblings and I, except my little sister, she was barely at that house, but that yard was the size of the planet to us. It was. I think now looking back, it was like a 5-acre property, but it was everything. We had the river went through that property, and I just being outside all of the time, never inside, and according to my mom, never with clothes on.
That's the best kind of life, man.
But yeah, just being out in the front yard. I think there was one time in specific we had a pet duck named Gus, and he wasn't like, we didn't like trim his wings or anything, so he would just leave and come back at will. And I remember one time he came back with like 200 of his friends. Oh man! Like our front yard was just covered in ducks.
He picked him up at Wild P and brought him back.
Yeah, or Bass Lake or something. I don't know. He brought a big old group back with him.
That's
like
cool.
Stuff like that.
He's like, guys, come party back at my place.
Yeah. They feed me everything I want.
Gus.
Flying V.
That's a great name for a duck. Gus.
Gus.
Yeah.
Who named him?
I don't know. Probably my older brother.
Okay.
That sounds like something you would name a duck. But no, I think just being just the wild innocence of a kid that just had 5 acres to himself. It's just
so awesome.
Love that.
Yeah.
My parents have all the best memories, because it's like they remember all the stuff that I don't. Mm-hmm. And I guess there's this big hill, and I would ride my bike down this hill, and I didn't know how to stop, so I would just run my bike into these oleanders. And like, my mom and dad so many times tried to talk me out of it, like, you're gonna get impaled or something. But it was just like, it's the easiest way to stop.
Oh yeah. It's too hard to figure out how to break this thing.
Yeah.
So just stop.
These bushes stop me every time.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oleanders or lilac bushes or something. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. It's a bush.
It was a bush,
Yeah,
and I rode straight
denser,
into it.
Yeah, it gets denser as you get into it.
I did it before Jackass. So.
all rights reserved. All right. So, what year is this? So you were born what year?
I was born in '86.
Okay.
I think we were in that Ahwahnee house at the end of '87.
Okay.
So this is late '80s, early '90s.
Okay.
Growing up there.
All right. And then, so transitioning to like preteen years, is that where you spent the majority of your time in Ahwahnee, or what? Did you guys move again?
We moved again. How old was I? I think it was my little sister's 7 years behind me. She was 94. And I want to say we moved out of the Ahwahnee house. My dad hurt his back and wasn't able to take the overtime needed to pay the bills for that house. Mm-hmm. And we moved to a rental house in North Fork.
Okay.
And I want to say I was probably 9.
Okay.
And that was weird. That was weird, moving schools and stuff at that age. But I don't have a ton of memories at that house. I think we were there for 2 years. That makes sense. 94 to 96, because 96 is when they bought the house they're in now.
Okay.
and that was in YLP.
Gotcha.
And probably most of my memories are in that house because I was 10.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was 10 when we moved there, and
Well, let's jump there then.
all right.
Yeah, because if you don't remember much between 94 and 96, let's just. Yeah.
I do remember one specific thing. I had these National Geographic books that I got,
Yes.
and it was like a club, right?
Mm-hmm.
You sign up for the club, and they send you like different pages or something, and you like put them in your binder,
Yeah.
and you build like this book. And I remember they said, those things you get in the mail that say you like won a contest. It was like a trip to Africa or something. As a kid, I thought I actually won. Like I was like, why can't I go? I'll never forget. Like my parents were trying to explain to me, like they send that to everybody, and I'm like, they can't send everybody to Africa, Mom. I won. I want to go. And I remember her trying to explain it to me.
Why would they lie?
9-year-old me, like, it's gold. Look, it's gold. It says I won. And she could not get it through me that they send that to all of you.
You're like, National Geographic are a bunch of liars.
Lying to me. I did get what? There's a couple memories from that house. I got a fish tank for my birthday and I cried because I was so happy.
Nice.
That was that house, but that's pretty much it.
What kind of fish did you put in the fish tank?
I don't remember.
Or did you put fish in the fish
I got
tank?
an axolotl. I remember getting one of those. And at the time, I called it a water dog. I don't know if that was accurate or if I just didn't know what it was, so that's what I called it. But
Nice.
that's much. But like I said, not a ton of memories from that house.
Yeah. Axolotl, I'm not familiar with that
It's
fish.
like a lizard, but it has gills. It breathes underwater
Wow.
only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Water dog or lizard dog?
Something, I don't know.
That's
I probably
awesome.
made it up.
Well, I've seen water dog at the pet shops before, so I'm assuming
Maybe that's what it was.
Axolotl's like its scientific
Proper
name.
name,
Or something.
yeah. I know now because I'm an adult.
Yeah. And I know things.
Yeah.
No, you're supposed to say adult. I'm an adult now.
Yes. Yeah. I'm still into fish tanks. I still do the fish tank thing.
Nice. What do you have right now?
I have a 100-gallon and a 10-gallon.
Okay.
And that was downsized. I had 6 fish tanks last year.
Hey,
Wow.
And I got into like live plants and all sorts of different like aquascaping. I don't know if you've heard that
No.
term. It's like
That's cool.
It's like landscaping but underwater. And
Okay.
like you create like a little, feature underwater, and it's all
Nice.
live plants and you trim it and stuff. But it was a lot of work, so I'm down to 2 tanks.
So it was like underwater bonsai trimming?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
You like
cool.
create a little like grass trails and stuff.
That's awesome.
I did
So it was
some
like
fun
underwater
stuff with
zen
it.
garden for you?
Yeah, it really was. It was therapy for sure.
Sorry, Charles. I'm throwing all kinds of crap at you right now.
And I'm agreeing with all of it.
You're like, yes, Eli, yes. That's awesome. So 6 tanks to 2 tanks.
Yeah.
Are you still doing the what did you call it again? Sorry.
Aquascaping?
Aquascaping.
I'm a little bit more on like the wild side.
Okay.
Where I just kind of let it grow.
Okay.
I have one tank that's kind of experimental. I don't know how much fish tank talk you guys want to get into, but like you have to do like water
it's your
changes.
show, man. Let's go. Let's go.
You had my attention.
You have
Now
to do
you have
like water changes and stuff like that. Like
Okay.
there's that terminology, keep the water clean and stuff. I have an experimental tank going right now. It has no filter. It has no heater. And I haven't done a water change on it in like almost 2 years.
Whoa.
Water quality is perfect. It has 1 fish in it and just snails.
Interesting.
And the fish it's called a pea puffer.
Okay.
And it eats snails. Snails breed really quickly, so I don't have to put anything in the tank. All I do is top off the water.
Wow.
To a fish tank guy, this is really interesting. I'm sure. I don't. You guys are probably like,
No,
cool.
this is fascinating to me because that there's like a symbiotic
It is
going
completely
on. Yeah.
self-contained. It's its own ecosystem. And a lot of fish tank guys that I have are like, you haven't done a water change in how long? What are your parameters? And I'm like, they're perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's completely achieved. Like
by accident?
But I just decided, I was like, there's so many plants in this tank, right? That the nitrates and everything that happened because of the fish waste and everything like that is being absorbed by the plants. So if there's enough plants in here, there's not a huge bio load on the tank because there's only 1 fish and snails.
Yeah.
can I just let this tank go forever and not touch it, just top off the water as it evaporates? And so far the answer is yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How long?
It's been like 2 years.
So,
I haven't done a water change on that thing.
Yeah, so how often does that puffer eat the snails?
Every day, I assume.
Wow.
But they breed so fast.
Yeah.
Snails are like, most fish tank people think snails are a nuisance. It's like you just got to find a way to balance it.
Yeah.
This is weird. How did we get on this?
No, I'm fascinated by this because well, what kind of plants are they?
It's a mixture of plants. There's the main plant in that tank is probably like dwarf hair grass. It carpets the bottom.
Okay.
And then I have Amazon swords and there's all sorts of different.
So cool,
if you're not in the hobby, it sounds weird. But it's just relaxing. It's one of those hobbies I could just sit and like watch the tank if my blood pressure's high or something. I don't know.
It reminds me of the octopus documentary you were talking about, Eli.
Yeah.
Except for you, it's snails.
Yeah. Have you seen my octopus teacher?
I haven't. I heard you talking about it on that episode, and I was definitely thinking. I think my wife and kids watched it actually.
Yeah. When
I was still traveling.
Jamie's sister put us onto it. And actually, what's funny is she told, I think, Jamie and I in some family conversation, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was interested, but I think I was also, we had talked about a bunch of other things, so it was kind of just melded in with a bunch of other topics.
Yeah.
And then during Exodus, I think it was a Sunday, and that was the discipline that I like kind of relaxed, was like watching stuff. So I was like, hey, let's throw this on, and I was like, I don't want to throw just garbage on. I want it to still be somewhat educational because the kids were around, and I threw it, and they all were glued. Like everyone's there, but I guess the one person that like was like, oh, I really really want to see this. Jamie's like off doing something, but she was cool about it. She's like, no, I'll watch it on my own.
I'll definitely have to check it out.
Check it out. It's really good.
I did listen to your spoilers, so I know some of the secrets.
It's all right. Well, what's interesting when you're talking about aquariums? Is that what we call them? What's the terminology?
Aquarium's good. I always just say fish tank.
Fish tanks. Okay.
But aquariums is fancy.
So Manny's like when he does a dive into something, it's like
I'm already planning to dive later
like a
today.
super deep dive, and I can see it on his face. I can see his face like.
Yeah.
And so that sounds similar in nature to like that for you is like it's you focused a lot of energy and attention into how does this work?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had tanks that failed and tanks that did really good, and then this one, most people would look at a tank with no filter and be like, "That's weird. How does the water get clean?"
That made me kind of go because I know pools.
Yeah,
and it's like a pool is like. I hate pools.
There's a lot of overlapping knowledge with pools and fish tanks, like with filtration and stuff.
Exactly.
Like,
it's like you have to manage levels.
Yeah, but no, that the idea of what's your bio load, meaning how many fish in there, how much are they pooping, how much are you feeding that tank, do you use fertilizer for the plants and stuff like that. So this tank having one little fish, and pea puffers are like this big, they're like the size of a pea.
Okay.
And snails almost have no bio load, and they eat stuff that causes a bio load. And so it's just like it got this balance to where the water is crystal clear all the time. My 100-gallon tank has a huge canister filter under it, and I do water changes on it like every other week, and I have to constantly clean the glass because it's got 5 goldfish in it, and they're dirty, dirty fish.
Yeah.
But this tank is just going on its own for this long period of time. Like I have buddies that are like fish tank people. They're always like, "Hey, how's that one tank doing?" And I'm like, "It's still going.
It's ripping.
Still going."
It's one of those things where if you threw one element additional or subtracted, it would probably just fall apart.
Just gone. Yeah. But no, it's like out of everything, glass doesn't get dirty. The water stays clean. It's achieved balance.
Yeah.
Well, it's something I'm trying to do.
I'm like fascinated by this because I'm also looking at it going, what could you grow in that you could eat? You know what I'm saying? Like those types of things where it's like if it's achieving that type of, relationship water-wise, like that's clean water.
Yeah, people do that.
Yeah, you could grow stuff that
it's hydroponics.
Yeah, exactly.
People do hydroponics with like tilapia so they can eat the tilapia. Nice. And the tilapia keep the water fertilized to grow the plants.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on aquariums, fish tanks? Rick,
Rick,
do you have any questions?
No.
I mean, yes, but we can move on.
Well, now I want to ask about live bulls.
Yeah.
And how this can translate to that.
That's
Live what?
Pools?
those like in-ground pools where they do like the plants and stuff.
Essentially, you make your own pond, but you
Yeah,
have to.
I've
I
seen those.
did a little research because that's what I want when we buy the property.
Yeah.
But you have to take all those things into consideration, the ecosystem, so that it can maintain itself. Because you're not gonna put it with chlorine and all that.
I've dove into the midnight YouTube on some of those for sure.
The doom scroll.
Yeah. I eventually end up watching 2 Indian guys building things out of mud.
A time lapse.
It's always that. You're like, how did I end up here? And this is so relaxing.
And why can't I stop? I was tired 6 hours ago.
All right. YLP.
Yes.
You're going up there with your fish tanks. What's like 3 really like kind of pivotal memories that you have growing up there before adolescence? Try and kind of park it, prior to like high school years.
I had an incident. I think I was probably 11 or 12, and I figured out what happened when you had aerosol cans and matches. Mm-hmm. And me and my buddy across the street, he was only up during the summer. He lived with his dad during the school year, so I only hung out with him during the summer. And he and I figured out this whole aerosol can thing, and we were doing flamethrowers on the driveway, and slowly went from the driveway off into the weeds, and we're like burning little weeds off of the rocks and stuff. And the field between his house and his neighbor's house caught fire. And we like panicked. We were like taking our shirts off and trying to put the fire out. It ended up burning like a good half acre. Fire department came out, sheriffs came out, and everything like that. And I remember we were trying to lie and tell them that it was these other kids that ran off. Oh, they ran off that way. And they're like, "Are these your shirts?" And we're like, "Yeah, we tried to put out the fire." Like, totally tried to turn it into we were the heroes and not the ones that caused the fire. But everybody was reading right through it. And I remember his parents were like, "What happened?" And then I started crying. I was like, "I can't lie anymore." Like, my buddy was like, "Shut up." And I told him, I was like, "We were playing.
Why are you
playing and it got out of control and it caught fire." And I remember they brought us back out, and they were talking like with the fire chief and the sheriff that were there. And they ended up taking my buddy and putting him in the back of the sheriff's car, and they were going to like take him in. Like, I know now. They're going to take him in and scare him and try to get him to, never do something like that again. Yeah. And then we lived across the street, and I didn't know, but the fire chief knew my dad, like, on a personal level. Okay. So he's walking across the street with, like, my shirt in his hand, dragging me down the driveway, and my dad's coming up to see what the commotion's all about. The fire chief looks at my dad and then looks over at the sheriff, and we're like, "This is going to get taken care of. We don't need to bring him in." And I was like, "No, you can bring me in. You need to bring me in. Bring me in."
You're like, "I don't want to face
the
this."
look on my dad's face, I knew what was coming. But that was one of those conversations. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. I was like, "No." Yeah, that was definitely a memory I won't forget.
Okay.
But yeah, there's that. And then, just normal childhood stuff. I think getting into trouble was at that house. That was when I got to the age where, started
pushing the limits,
making the bad choices, not coming home when I was supposed to come home.
Yeah.
The preteen trouble,
Yeah.
But it was the trouble, like, I remember my dad telling me back in the, when I was starting to get into the teenage years in my early 20s, like, he's like, "That was the trouble I wish you would have kept getting in," because it's like, I can handle that. You go out, like, I went fishing with one of my buddies, and I got lost on the way back from the lake, and I didn't get back to the house till like 9:30. And my dad, we were worried sick about you, but I remember him telling me, he's like, "I did that all the time when I was a kid."
Yeah.
He's like, "That's healthy. That's the kind
normal.
of trouble,
yeah.
you have to get in trouble because you need to try to do better next time, and it's for your safety type thing." Yeah. But he's like, "Do that all you want." He's like, it's the other stuff when you become a teenager that's scary.
Yeah. Where you're driving.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know if you've crashed into a tree or if you're drunk somewhere or, like all the,
Yep.
Okay. Any other specific memories?
No, not really. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. I did a lot of running around. It was always on the bikes, always meeting up with all the buddies. It was one of those places. Like Wild P was close enough to where all your buddies were within a bike ride away, but it was far enough apart that it was an all day thing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, my buddy Zach grew up there, so that's why I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
It was a cool. That's what I remember. Is it was like couple acre lots at least. Like interspersed throughout the mountains, and it was cool because you could just traipse all over. And what elementary and middle school did you go to?
All of them. I went to when I was little. I went to Wasuma.
Okay.
Until first grade, and then we moved to that North Fork house, and I went to North Fork for 2 years, which ended up being like second and third, and then I went to River Gold when we moved to Yosemite Lakes Park, which at the time was only a K through 6.
Okay.
So I went to River Gold from 4th grade to 6th grade, and then moved to Course Gold for 7th grade and 8th grade.
Wow.
So I went to a handful of schools.
And you never
there.
touched Spring Valley.
No, my wife went to Spring Valley.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's why I was wondering because we were just down the. We were 15 minutes away from Spring Valley.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my wife went there. But no, never went that one.
Okay.
All the other ones.
Yeah, all the other ones. All right. High school.
I was a Badger. Yosemite Badgers.
Okay.
We played all these schools down here.
All right.
We were the Rednecks.
Yeah. Still are.
Still are. Barely. It's weird because most of my confirmandi were YHS too, and
really
don't fit the bill.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Is it, to your point, or is it because commuting now? A lot of folks that are working in town but that live out?
Yeah, I think so. People are trying to live more rural but still have their jobs down here and stuff. So, you get a little bit of a mixed community in that sense, which is good in some ways. I mean, when I was at Yosemite, it was not uncommon to have a couple of trucks parked right outside school grounds with their guns in their window because we were going hunting after school.
Yeah.
Not that way anymore.
No, not at all. And that's America in general.
Yeah. But
sadly,
it is what it is. But it's still a good community. It's still a small high school in the grand scheme of things, but it's bigger than when I was there. So it's not as spread out anymore. They built a couple new buildings. I remember I had one passing period from English to Ag. And I think the passing periods were 7 minutes, but it was like 3/4 of a mile to get from one class to the next. Now they have like 2 main buildings.
Ooh.
But we were all over the hill.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went through. You moved through siblings, but let's be specific. So you're youngest of how many?
I have one little sister. There's 6 of us. My little sister's 7 years behind me. She was the quote-unquote surprise. We're not allowed to call her an accident. My mom gets mad when we call her an accident. She was a blessing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So oldest, go by name all the way down. Just first name, just to protect.
My oldest sister, Christy.
Okay.
And then my brother was after her, Dan. And then Geneva, Marie, then myself, and my little sister Annie.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
It was. We had a good relationship all through childhood. All of us. We still have really good relationships. We're very tight family. We've all got, our own political views and our own views on religion and stuff. The few things have changed, but we were all just together this past week, all week long, because Saturday was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And we all just get along just like we used to.
Yeah.
It's good. We let the differences stay, differences, and we go back to how we were when we were kids.
Yeah,
it's good.
That's awesome.
We can play cards and board games all night.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
My parents' 50th is coming up in August.
Yeah,
that's
Any
awesome.
big plans?
Yeah, we're doing like a 5-day, 4-night thing over Central Coast, like the whole family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all 11 of us, wives and kids, will be basically like rented a compound. Over in like the hills of Santa Cruz. It's pretty legit.
That's
I take
cool.
no credit for it. My sister, they call it the party planning committee or something like that. Like three of them kind of raised their hand and said, we'll run point on getting it together, and they've done a fantastic job. So
yeah, that's good. I think that's a gift in and of itself for your parents, because they did a vow renewal, and it was 50 years to the hour that they did the vow renewal, which was really neat. And we put it all together, me and my siblings, all through Facebook Messenger over the past year and a half.
Yeah.
Made it all work out, and we did a reception at a local hotel, and had as many immediate family members of my parents as could get there come in, and all my siblings were here for the whole week, and all the gatherings are at my house. So it was pretty hectic week, but it was so fun.
Yeah,
it was worth it. And my parents are on honeymoon 2.0 right now.
Nice.
They're out at the coast.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm pumped because it's they love to camp, and the biggest thing about this place is it's as close to camping as you can get with all the other dynamics going on, right? Like
with the amenities.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I'm pumped. I think it's also a function of we're having this dialogue, like as a family, of anytime we try and coordinate stuff, if it's at a hotel or some sort of convention area or something like that, inevitably people aren't connecting because we're traveling to and from hotels, right? So it's like there's a lot of just this dead space, right? So the thought was like, we need to all be in literally the same spot, and be able to stay there and be able to walk to our respective, lodgings, so that it just cuts out all that noise, in terms of us not connecting. Yeah. But most importantly, my parents are just pumped that everyone's going to be in one spot. Yeah. Because normally it's like one or two people aren't there, or families, I should say, in this case. So, anyways.
We did a family reunion in 2018 was the last time we were all together. Okay. That was a lot of fun, but getting everybody together for this is just, I'm so glad it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, a year and a half. That's what you need, legitimately. Like, when you've got that many people, it's like, you gotta plan stuff out that far out. Yeah.
No excuses. We've known for this long, make it happen.
Yeah, it's coming. All right. So, anything high school wise, memory wise, importance, pivotal moments, anything of note?
Confirmation was important to me. Okay. I do remember that, and it was important to me. Like a lot of people, like most of my confirmandi this year, you could see it was like the parents, we got to get them confirmed and
check that box.
Check the box, yeah. Exactly. But I remember feeling like, it was important, and I remember after my confirmation feeling like I'm an adult now. I'm going to be a contributing member of the church, and who knows where it went wrong after that. But I had a couple of years where like I was very focused on my relationship, and things were good, and I think I'm happy it happened then, and my lukewarm years were in my 20s and not then, because you could do so much to screw up your life in those high school years, And I had my priest at the time, Father Jerry. He was late to priesthood. He had a wife and kids, and his wife passed, and so he was ordained. I want to say he was like 65 or something when he was ordained. So he had a way of talking at the AMBO that like really connected with the congregation, because he experienced some things that a lot of priests don't. Yeah.
And he knew what it was like to be a married guy. Exactly.
Yeah. And have kid and stuff like that. And it it was good for me at the time because he was able to talk to me in a way that, you know, a father talks to a kid and stuff like that. A biological father. He was a father. But he was dead set that I was going to be a priest. He told my parents, like, he's like, that kid's going to be a priest.
Interesting.
I see it in him. And at the time I was like, it's possible. But, you know, I was still very into, like, girlfriends and things like that. And it was not long after that I started going down to Holy Spirit, because Holy Spirit had more of a younger, like, vibe to it than my church had. Like I told you, it was a very retired community vibe to my church. And so I went down to Holy Spirit and was introduced to, you know, the Life Teen program and everybody going, you know, to I think it was the year of my confirmation. We went the first time to Steubenville, San Diego with the Holy Spirit group. And so that I was just like, oh, I'm going to start volunteering down there and doing that. And so I was a Life Teen volunteer, and I helped Martha out, and that was a lot of fun. And then I dated a girl that I met there. I guess I should remain nameless. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're questioning it, yeah, stay there. Yeah.
I have no idea where she is in life. I haven't seen her since.
So then, yeah, just leave it at that. Leave it at that. Yeah.
Dated her for a little while. She was a little bit manipulative. Kind of made me feel like I was wrong about everything, and the church was wrong about certain things, but right about certain things. Kind of made me question stuff for a while. But in all of that, I got to the point where I met my wife. We were dating. She was in her last years of high school, and I was just out of high school, so it was like kind of a weird vibe between us at first, but she was much more mature than I was, so it made sense. But yeah, that was like I think I started all that because I was saying confirmation was important. It brought me into my early 20s knowing that my Catholicism was going to be a part of my life. And so that's high school. That was my biggest takeaway from high school, is that at that age I knew that Catholicism was going to be here for the long run, you know. Yeah. But
okay.
Not to get into young adulthood too quickly.
No. That's so what so you just started showing up at Holy Spirit because of like the program going on, or did you know anyone that from your community that was also kind of eyeballing Holy Spirit as well?
No, okay. I came down solo. Okay. Me and Jacob, Father Jacob, still getting used to that. We made a pretty good connection at that Steubenville trip. He was like a young apostle. I don't know if you remember that position.
Man, that was that year?
Yeah. He was a young apostle, and I sat next to him on the bus on the way back and like had a lot of good conversation, and we connected in a lot of ways. So he was pretty much the reason I came down to Holy Spirit, because he's like, Life Teen is like this cool thing, and you guys don't have it at your church, so you should come down here. And so I came down, and I was like 18, freshly out of high school, so I was like a volunteer, one of the younger volunteers, and just, you know, was fully enveloped in that for a couple of years, and, you know, left for military and stuff like that, and that was kind of like the beginning of my lukewarmness in the church. But thankfully had met my wife before leaving for the military, and we were dating and serious enough that we stayed together and did the distance thing for a while, and just kind of enjoyed the vibe at Holy Spirit a little bit more than my old retirement community parish, which is funny because I'm exactly the opposite now. It's almost too noisy for me. The size of the
No, just we talk about this stuff all the time.
Who
brought those drums into the church?
Rick was sharing
those guitars down.
Yeah, Rick was sharing the story about how like they would the nonverbal communication that you guys were getting.
Oh, dude! So I'm not this guy anymore. But we were like in the Life Teen band at Holy Spirit too. You saw us there, but before that, I was like in the Life Team band at the church I grew up in, and then we started playing at St. Anthony of Padua at the 6 o'clock mass. But there were like the old guard, the old people that just were not about it, because we had a drummer,
Yeah.
and they just were not about it. But they would so like passively aggressively, like at 6 o'clock mass, they're walking in at 5:30 as we're like sound checking, and there's no one in the church yet, but they're making it a point to, like, as they walk in the church, they got their fingers plugging their ears, like dirty looking us, and I'm like, can you just not, like, just,
Now I would totally be the guy that's like,
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't go to that mass.
yeah, that's more accurate. It's like, no, not happening.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, come on, I was in a different place than I am now, but back then, I think the heart was still in the right place, though.
Oh, for sure.
The worship was there, and it was just like, we're just trying to elevate the level of worship here. Like, you don't gotta, it's like how many people are turned away by that,
I think it was a period in the church, and probably is still going on at a number of parishes, I'm sure, but it was a period where, like, the beige Catholicism really didn't know where it fit, so it was trying to latch on to Protestant concepts,
exactly,
and draw in, like, teenagers and youth, rather than what you pointed to earlier, Charles, which is, if you speak truth and you're just honest and direct about it, that wins people over, right? In charity, right? Like with a level of respect and humility, and ultimately love. But like the mass is already like so holy. And to try and throw something that's Protestant onto it, I don't want to say it denigrates it, but it does, In
a sense, it does. I think, like you were saying, is there was definitely a goal there,
for sure.
Right? There was an outreach to that age group, and don't get me wrong, I remember going to those 11:30 masses on Sunday and seeing all those teenagers and.
I was the assistant youth minister.
Yeah.
I
That's
remember
when we met.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny though is like I look back at that time and I remember even back then, the Life Team band and the drums and everything. But it's like when you looked at all the teenagers in the like the first 3 pews that they all had to sit in, none of them were into it. There were a few that might have been like in their heart spiritually into it, but it's like. Most of those teens, just because again, it's like you're trying to just appeal to them with Protestantism or with like
emotion,
and it's it's like, oh, let's make this music sound like what you listen to every day, and they're probably just like, no, I'd rather just listen to what I listen to every day. Like you're not going to do it better than they do it, and you're not going to out Protestant the Protestants. So I mean, I remember even back then kind of saying that, and it bothered me back then. Now I look at it and I'm just like, those kids were probably, they didn't care for it. Because why? Because they prefer an approach more of just like, hey, just tell me the truth. Just tell me how it is.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting season for the church. That's for sure. Not just Holy Spirit, but like that
as
Life
a
Teen
culture.
in general.
Life Teen in general. I think there was good things about Life Teen. I think that Steubenville conference, I think, changed a lot of lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it was just the music that did that. I think the adoration with 3,000 other teenagers. That's what did it for me.
But you also had people that were preaching truth.
Yeah, exactly.
You had people that were talking about chastity. Right?
Yeah.
Talking about porn to teenagers. Talking about the hard truths of, listen, this is what you're struggling with. We're in touch with this.
Yeah.
We're aware that this is a problem, right? And it always has been a problem. This isn't new, right? Like, it just takes different forms in current culture. Here's what the church offers as remedy. Right? And it was spoken in a truth, right? Like, and most of the time it was, this is my background. This is why I was drawn to this topic, is because I had to battle this, and this is the only remedy that really made sense. Anyways,
And today's youth it's even more difficult. I mean, you think about when we were teenagers, we didn't have cell phones in our pockets. I remember my first cell phone was that Nokia brick, with prepaid minutes,
With a snake.
Good luck getting yourself into trouble on that thing.
Yeah.
Now,
Took you 5 minutes to send one text.
Yeah.
Predictive T9.
But now, I want to say the average age for kids getting cell phones is like 8 years old or something like
gosh.
that. And cell phones that are connected to the internet, and you could do anything and everything you want on there.
Gosh.
Before you have any sense of what's okay and what's not okay. We would have loved to have been able to send our kids to Catholic school. It just wasn't we just can't afford it, really.
And we can't either.
And
you're not alone in that.
We went what we considered second best, which was homeschool.
Yeah.
And it's been really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And, we feel like we're not sheltering, but we have a sense of being able to put a moral compass in our kids before, they're the age where they're just going to go out into the world. And it's just like, man, like when I look at some of the stuff that parents are having to deal with at public schools, it's scary.
It's insane.
And it's like we don't private homeschool because that's almost just as expensive as trying to do like a private school or Catholic school or anything like that. We go through a charter.
Are you guys at Mountain Home?
Yeah.
That's where my kids go. Only at the
Endeavor?
Fresno.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
And the classes that they do go to in person, we can, monitor at least, there's not just shock at what they're learning or anything like that. I think in all the years we've been doing it, my oldest is 16, there's only been one curriculum that one of them has done where we've been like, man, this is ridiculous. And it was a science curriculum. And it was like just super left-leaning, and it was basically like creating activists. That was the whole idea of the whole
which to your point
curriculum.
is by and large in every subject matter at the public level.
Yeah.
It's literally turning people into just activists.
And I'm terrified because I hear
Rick's body language.
I'm terrified because I hear
Did you know that math is gay?
And we got the explicit sticker.
We got the gay in there.
I'm terrified because I hear that all of that is very prevalent in the universities, and I have a son who graduates next week and going to university, and
Where's he
that's
going?
one of the things I'm worried about. Fresno State.
Yeah. Nice.
It's
Just
about,
keep him at home while he goes
you
there.
gotta instill that moral compass early.
It's too late now.
Wow. Well, with that attitude.
I adopted a lot of what my parents did as I grew up, and I raised my kids with a stern hand in certain ways, but at the same time, I'm a little bit more. I'm going to use the term liberal in a loose way. I'm a little bit more liberal with what like movies and stuff they're allowed to watch, as long as I know what it is and I know what questions it could bring up, and I try to utilize those as teachable moments and stuff. I was not sheltered in any way, but there was just certain things my parents didn't want me to see until I was 16, 18. But I'm a little bit more lenient with things like that, but at the same time, I understand why I'm doing it, and because the world is the way that it is, and my 16-year-old does have a phone in his pocket, I'm not naive enough to think that he's not going to see things that I don't want him to see. And I would rather do that certain things in a controlled environment where I can field questions and be able to answer things in certain ways that doesn't make him naive and put him in a situation where he goes out into a working world as a young man, and he's just like, oh my gosh,
this is insane. Yeah. I think the other part to that too is that that freedom, and I don't mean this in the political sense, but the freedom to choose, right? And I mean it from the Augustinian standpoint of like our freedom to choose to love God or to turn away from Him needs to be reflected in the home. Yeah. And we need to know, right, as parents, as leaders, when certain like subjects start to get introduced or allowed to, okay, we're going to let the leash out a little bit, but then rein it in terms of, okay, we need to have conversation around what, like, we're entrusting that you do have a formed conscience to know what's right on this. Yeah. But what I'm seeing right now, we need to We need to reel this in a little bit more and then let it out again so that like it's guided in the right direction again.
Exactly.
Is that fair enough in terms of that's how I'm reading what you're saying? Yeah, that's like, to me it's like, because there needs to be this ability to go, you need to stand on your own 2 feet, and if I do all of this for you, then you're going to get out in the world and it's going to be shock and awe. Yeah. Like you're just going to be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So
it's my job to prepare you for the world, basically. You need, and I have a short amount of time to make you a contributing adult. Yeah. That's going to be able to function in reality, and reality is not what I can force into the home. I can force as close to perfection as I want in the home with nothing negative, and that's just not what you're going to be, thrown into. And so I don't see it being helpful as being too, on top of every movie and every show and every, song that they listen to and stuff like that. My son is, my wife uses the term for her first pancake. The first pancake never comes out perfectly golden brown. It's always like splotchy and stuff because it's like that weird test pancake when you're getting the heat right.
Oh, poor kid.
Yeah, right.
None of mine ever did.
But certain things,
none of them.
But certain things are proving to work because I haven't put a super tight leash around him, and he's making decisions on his own that I'm in agreement with. Like, there's certain movies that he doesn't want to watch because he's like, I don't want to open myself up to that.
Good.
Right there, man. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah. And it's like, my friends are going to go see this, but I don't want to go see it because this, that, and the other. It's like, good. Yeah. That freedom of choice.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, young adult, you've met, at the time it's your girlfriend. What was enlisting into the Air Force like? What was the driving factor on that?
I remember I rear-ended somebody.
This is going to be interesting.
So
you showed up at the enlistment office.
one of those situations, like my dad was driving me somewhere after I had rear-ended somebody in a car that he owned, and I was, how old was I? I was 18, and it was like one of those conversations on the way to the hospital to make sure I didn't like have a shattered vertebrae or something like that. And he's like, you got to do something, like, because I was working. I was paying my own bills, but I was working at like a hardware store.
Gotcha.
He's like, you got to figure something out, go to school or get some type of career rolling or something like that. And I remember it was just like the first thing that popped into my head. So I told it to, I remember saying it to him like it was a plan, but it literally was just like the first thing I could say. I was like, well, I'm going to enlist. I'm going to enlist in the military. And he's like, oh yeah, what branch? And I was like, Air Force. Nice. Obviously. My brother was in the Air Force, and he's like, well, good. And he's like, that's a good plan. And
obviously.
So I literally just rolled with it at that point. I think it was one of those things that like at the time it was what kept him at bay. I was able to stay in the house and make that call.
There's something beautiful about that though, in terms of that sometimes it doesn't need to be this complex plan.
Right. Just something.
And it can just be, start out as just something, right? Yeah. And the beauty, I'd say, of masculinity is hey, horseshoes and hand grenades right now. Yeah. I just got to get in, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was late 2005. Okay. I enlisted just December 23rd, 2005. And then me and my wife, girlfriend at the time, our first date was January 2006.
Okay.
So I was already enlisted. Dates were already on the calendar when we started dating. Okay. And
so she knew right away.
She knew right away that I was going military. Yeah. And it was interesting because we had like the first 2 months, like things exploded. Like it was really quick. Like so quick that it was just like whoa, like it was I knew within a couple of dates that I felt like marriage material. Like I felt like it was very much like that, like God feeling of this is the girl, this is the one that was created for me. And I was probably too quick in like saying stuff like that to her because it was like scary. She was younger than me, And I'm sitting here telling her, like, I think I could be with you forever. And, like, we had
She's
conversations
like,
about that.
What are we talking about right now?
And because of that, there was, like, a lot of break up, get back together, break up, get back together. I broke up with her because I was leaving, and I was like, I don't want to hold you back, like that old-fashioned.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, that type thing. And then we'd get back together, and then it would be like, it just, the very beginning was like that. And she decided that she wanted to stick around when I left, and she's like, yeah, I'll be here waiting for you when you get back. So I left and ended up having like a bunch of delays with going to boot camp and stuff like that. So I ended up going to boot camp till June of 2006,
which is par for the course for military.
Yeah, it's normal. You go to MEPS and you get all your medical and stuff, and then you have to get scheduled for the thing, but then they have to make your boot camp dates line up with your specialty school dates and stuff like that. So it takes time. But so I ended up leaving in June. So we had been together for roughly 6 months, and I gave her a promise ring before I left, and wasn't able to talk to her for boot camp. Boot camp's 8 weeks, and I got one phone call out, I think, and I called her and my parents on the same day, like maybe a minute and a half each. Pretty much give address, say I love you, and please send me letters type thing.
8 weeks is too long.
But was able to talk to her. I remember just crying like a baby, like I was just, it's so hard here, and I miss you, and all of that, and crying. And then the same thing with my parents. And she ended up coming out with my parents for graduation. This is in Texas, nice. Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. So she came out, saw me graduate, got to see her for a couple of days, and it was crazy because everybody like had their wives and girlfriends there and stuff, and I think mine was the youngest.
Yeah. She
was 17. But yeah, that said a lot to me, about her commitment, and kind of had those like reinvigorating feelings that I had, found the one. Mm-hmm. And when did I get back? After Security Forces Academy, I think I got back in November. And, we were both adults and making adult decisions. We were very immature in the sense of how we were running things shortly after my return. Yeah. And there's consequences to those actions. Yeah. And I think when did we find out? She graduated in June, and we found out she was pregnant in August.
Okay.
And my telling everybody was the hardest part, right?
Sure.
Like having to go through that thought process of how do we tell each individual person in our lives. And I think we started with the easiest people, which was her parents. Or actually, no, I think I told one of my sisters first. Tried to get some advice on how do I tell mom and dad. My mom and dad that raised us extremely Catholic and did an amazing job, and hey, here's how I screwed up this time. But we told my sister, and then we told her parents, who were not as strictly religious. And
how did her parents take it?
Her mom took it like way too well. Like it wasn't what I needed. I needed people to tell me I made a mistake, right? Okay. That's how I wanted all these interactions to go. I wanted to know that I did something wrong, and that it was wrong, but it was going to be okay. That's the kind of hope I was getting. But
isn't this fascinating? Let's pause here.
Yeah.
I love this because it points to the fact that we all want accountability.
Yeah.
In our core, right? Like you were like the response. I probably didn't know until after that response from her mom that all of a sudden you're like, that's not what I want.
Right.
I don't want someone that's just like, oh, this is great.
And that's how it was.
Yeah, like that we're so pumped, which it's awesome that they're excited about a baby. Like we should be excited about life. I'm not, like saying that. But there should be but we have to have this conversation.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So anyways.
And it was in levels because we told her mom first, and her mom was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, and this is going to be great. And that just like, it did not sit with me well. I was like, this is not how this is supposed to be going. And then we went inside, we told her dad, and her dad was a little bit upset.
Yeah.
Obviously, dad.
Yeah.
but just not very confrontational guy. And
Okay.
so that didn't go that way. And I was like, all right, now it's my parents. That was the hard one. And I did get the reaction I was hoping for out of that one. And man, you disappoint your parents a lot through your teen years and stuff like that. You make mistakes, but it's like, that's such a hard place to put your parents, because it's like, it's life.
Yeah.
And they're, we're Catholic, and we're Catholic to the core, and we should be happy and excited about that life. And they were.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was very much a moment where my dad had to take, that stance of, what the hell were you thinking?
Yeah.
Look where your life is now. Where you thought it was going, it's not going there anymore.
Yeah.
It's time to grow up. That whole conversation, and through tears and everything, it was exactly what I needed to hear. And it's like you said, I got that accountability from my old man, and it gave me what I needed to be able to step up. And at the time I joined National Guard, so I still didn't have a solid full-time job, other than my drill weekends and stuff like that. I had medical insurance, which was good, but we weren't married and everything like that. So we had decided, maybe it's not the greatest idea to just jump into marriage, and my parents were pretty pivotal to that decision. They're like, a lot of people make that mistake and ends up not working out, and everything will be stacked against you. And so we even decided to take a step back from dating.
Whoa.
While we were trying to figure things out about each other. So it ended up being more of falling back into a courtship type thing, learning a little bit more about each other in the sense of adulthood and how we were going to adult together. Yeah. Went to a couple of appointments with her, and it became apparent really quickly that my thoughts early on about this being meant to be was accurate, but it was my parents guiding me in the sense of, don't just jump into marriage because you think that's what you're supposed to do.
Because there's an obligation.
Right.
To
turn into a shotgun wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so the living situation was separate, right?
Yeah, separate. Yep. We didn't live together until after we got married. We got married. It was she was a Christian pastor. But it was basically a civil marriage. Okay. And obviously we couldn't jump into a Catholic marriage in that sense. There was, too many things that would have needed to happen. She hadn't gone through RCIA. She hadn't made any attempt at going that direction yet. We hadn't made that decision at that point. And going to an engaged encounters and stuff just didn't seem like an appropriate thing. So we did. I ended up proposing 3 months after finding out, and got married before. When did we get married? We got married in September, and my son was born in February. So she wasn't
what
really.
Day? What day in February?
20th.
Nice.
February 20th.
I'm the 19th.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what happened? Manning's giving the break. Let's take a break. We'll jump back into this conversation.
Okay.
All right. Hello, friends. I want to tell you a little bit about our First Fruits movement. What we do first in everything matters. It sets the trajectory of whatever action we take. In Leviticus, God tells Moses to share with the Israelites that they must bring forth the first fruits of their livestock, of their produce, and of their drink. The fulfillment of this is found in Jesus himself. He is the firstborn of the Father. He is the first man to conquer death. He is the first to ascend into heaven. Before Jesus' ministry, he would run to Mary for guidance and counsel. So why would I not do the same? What can you do to participate? Commit to praying the rosary daily, invite other men and women to join you, and share the movement with your friends on social media and other communication platforms. What can you do to support us here at Circa Ignem and First Fruits? First, pray for us and our mission daily, and second, buy our hats and future merch at circaignem.com. That's CIRCAIGNEM.com. Thank you. And we're back. All right. So let's jump into that 3 months. What were kind of the moments or moment that kind of concluded for you, okay, she's the one. We need to just get this over with, essentially.
Yeah. So you have like a really escalated way of thinking, right? Like you're trying to make sense out of things really quickly. So I don't know. I just started paying attention to the feelings that I had already had. You know, I had early on. I kind of had those feelings like, you know, she was the one, and we had a lot of these connection points, and you know, it just kind of felt that whole, you know, soulmate mentality. And then once she was pregnant with my child, you know, you start to notice those maternity things coming into play, and just the level in which, you know, she adapted to this, what should have been terrifying, you know.
Yep.
Which she'd tell me today that obviously everything was terrifying,
For sure.
But she adapted so well, and you know, the conversations were had about, like, you know, parenting styles and everything like that. And I don't know, it just kind of it opened up that thought process, that long-term thought process of this is going beyond having those lovey-dovey butterflies in my stomach to, you know, this is the mother of my children. You know, this is who was made for me.
Yeah. And you're seeing already even though she's not necessarily, she's aware of your Catholicism, right? Mm-hmm. But she hasn't necessarily committed in any capacity, correct?
Right.
And yet you are seeing just the natural beauty of her desire to, you know, maybe super small flashes of it, but her own desire to be a good mother.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
And it's like that starts to become very attractive too, especially when you're already in love with that person. You're like, oh, this makes you even better, you know?
Yeah. No, that's definitely it. It built up. It just built up, and it built up really quickly. Yeah. And you know, obviously other circumstances, you know, sure, engagement ring could have been around that time, but marriage would have been, you know, a while down the road, and planned things a little bit differently and more, you know, correctly in the sense of things. But a quick wedding ended up happening, and we were married by September, and Peyton came around in February, and by that time we were in a little apartment down on Shaw and 168, which we had no idea was a terrible area because we were, you know, country folk. And I was like, oh, the rent is great price here. Look, there's gates. It's a gated community.
There's a reason there's gates.
Yeah.
A lot of college kids there.
Yeah. We found out later they called it Sin City. Later on, after we had been robbed and, you know, all sorts of things, we found out it was called Sin City.
Yeah. I didn't know they called it that.
Yeah.
Dude, it's gnarly in there.
It was pretty bad. And none of our family really knew. Like, we were all from north of town. Like, nobody really knew. But it was rough. But it was good. I mean, we had a rough few years figuring stuff out. You know, first kid, second kid.
What's the age difference between first
and second? Is 17 months.
Okay. So that's Declan and Ryan.
Okay.
16.
Yeah.
16.
It went pretty steady like that. It was like 17 months, 24 months, and then like a little over 2 years, and then my youngest was actually the biggest gap. We had lost a few, dealt with some miscarriages, a couple that were a little bit later on, like second trimester. That was pretty difficult.
Sorry, man.
But you know, you realize in those moments, looking back, and it's like, if this wasn't the person that I was supposed to be with, you wouldn't get through those types of things, you know. And we only got through it because we had each other, and we had our faith.
I was just going to say, and the faith.
And understanding that it's so far out of what our understanding is going to be. Mm-hmm. And through a lot of that, I think what we figured out is that, you know, God trusts you with certain circumstances because maybe you're going to be that rock in somebody's life to be able to walk them through that troubled time. And it's happened more than I could count, where people have been like, yeah, I just don't know how to do this because we just lost a baby and I don't know how to take it. And I'm able to be like, hey, you know, I understand what you're going through. And, you know, and I very much feel like there's a sense of purpose in that life that we had, you know, that child. And, you know, I try to utilize that as much as I can because I feel like I don't want to waste, as crazy as it would sound to some people, I don't want to waste that gift, you know, of that struggle that we went through. And when people reach out, you know, there's a reason.
Yeah. I think waste that sacrifice is probably a little more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it goes to like the what Jesus says, right, in the Gospels of like we're called to minister to the poor, right? So when you've experienced something like that, it's not going to be the same to what their, you know, circumstances are, but you can relate.
Yeah.
And you can step with them and cry with them and mourn with them and, you know,
right.
Again, just be present more than anything else. Just be someone that they can go, oh, this is someone that gets it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like trying to, it's the perfect analogy is like, it's trying to have a conversation with someone that's never had kids. And you're like call it 2-3 kids deep. It's like there's just there's no concept of what you're talking about.
They try to relate to you the story about their dog or something.
Yes,
my dog does that all the time.
The dog one is great. I'm always like, yeah, no.
My dog never listens to.
Yeah, I've tried to teach him so many times.
My babies have fur.
Okay,
Yeah.
So you guys are living Shaw 168, Sin City.
We don't mean to make light of what we were just talking about.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah, Shaw 168 in an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment that was probably about the size of my master bedroom now, but it was neat. It was neat being a young adult, having no idea the danger that I was living in. But I was going to work and we were buying food and, you know, it was funny. Story my wife loves to tell in a sarcastic way. And I remember the first homemade meal she made for me was shepherd's pie.
Nice.
And I had shepherd's pie before, so I was like, oh, you're making shepherd's pie? That's awesome. So she had the meat, you know, she had the potatoes and the vegetables and stuff. What she didn't know at the time was that you had to season food. Like in a very literal way. Yeah. No salt, no pepper, nothing. It was just plain meat, plain mashed potatoes, peas and carrots in a dish. And I remember her guy coming home from work. I just felt like, yeah, my wife made me dinner, and she like puts a plate in front of me. I just felt so adult, right? Yeah.
I'm a man.
I go to take a bite, and I'm like, do we have any ketchup? Like, it's so funny because it was, I mean, she's come a long way. She makes a lot of amazing food now, but we laughed so much because she had none of that like coming up. Like her mom didn't cook with her. Her mom didn't even like really clean with her. Her mom did everything. She was one of the moms that just like always took. She was very much a homemaker. Yeah. And it set my wife up for having to learn all of that on the fly. Yeah. When we had our son, I had changed more diapers than my wife had ever even seen. You know. Yeah. So she's learning all of this stuff with her first child. Yeah. You know, and obviously
that's so hard.
Yeah,
it's so hard.
I mean, obviously I had to learn a lot too, but I had nieces and nephews before, so I had a little bit of a exposure to it, and she was just very first. Everything was with her son, you know. Yeah. But she took to it so naturally. I knew really, really quickly that I made a good call. God made a good choice, I should say. Yeah. But she adapted so fast, and I mean, we were kids with kids. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of us felt that. But
we absolutely were. I laugh at your story because Jamie, when we first got married, could make toast and boil an egg. And not lying. You can ask her before you leave. Like, and it was funny because she literally it was the same thing. Her mom just handled everything and never was like, hey, we're gonna make this together. You know, like we're going to learn how to do stuff together. You know, because this is going to be important, whether you're married or not. Like you need to be able to take care of yourself. It just wasn't, didn't compute. So it's just funny how that like
it is. Yeah. So we make the kids cook for us.
Nice.
We have them, go through meals, look up a recipe on Pinterest or something, and follow the recipe. And we want them to be a little bit more prepared. We definitely make them clean their own rooms.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Keep up with all their rooms.
Yeah.
But not that they do a good job. My wife will tell you. But
the shepherd's pie story reminded me of that episode in Friends when Rachel makes a shepherd's pie, but the pages get stuck together and she adds jam. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
She's like, potatoes, ground beef, peas, jam. And then when they're trying it,
it tastes like feet.
Joey's like, I like it. Like, what's not to like? Beef, good. Potatoes, good. Jam, good. I thought that's where you were going.
Joey is such a frat dude. Like, he's just like, it's good.
It's good.
Yeah. Well, no, we grew up together. It was the best. I love having that background and just.
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No.
I mean, really, like to your point about, I know people, and I'll dance around this carefully. I know people that have been on the other end of that, where they've been very established and they get married, and it is a hard road. Yeah, because they're both set in their ways, right? And they're both like, no, this is how I've done it for basically since I've quasi been an adult. Yeah, and now you're coming in saying, no, this is how we're gonna do it moving forward. Versus, no, we're just kids, literally, like barely sniffing at adulthood, and we get to learn how to be adults together. Yeah, and kind of modify this as we go. Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for sure.
Yeah, we talked about that in my episode, but it like a couple in their 30s that gets married, it's like they're both got their established lives individually, and it's like, okay, I'm welcoming you into my world that I've already built. And so it's like, well, this is like, no, this is what I'm used to, this is what I've built. Like, you don't have a right to come in and change it, as opposed to young kids, like, I mean, we got married young, you guys got married young, you and Angelique have been together forever, it's like you built a life together. Yeah, absolutely, from the start. There's a I don't know if you remember them. There was a young couple that went to Holy Family in Kingsburg when we were going out there. But the girl was like 17 and the boy was 18. And she got brought into the church while she was 17.
I vaguely remember them.
But like they got married like a year later.
Oh, did they?
Like super young. That's and they have a little girl, like she's almost a year. And it's just great. Like, but I'm like, dude, if I was a betting man, like they're gonna grow old together because you build a life together, Yeah. It's just the church is very wise in that area. If only people listened.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. I mean, Laura and I, oh man, how far was it? She was pregnant with Royce, which is our third, when she went through RCIA and was baptized, First Communion, and confirmed, because she had her parents never baptized her. Because and a lot of Protestant churches, it's like old enough to do a profession of faith and things like that. Yeah. And so she never went through that. But so we always joke that Royce was baptized twice.
That's awesome.
Once in the womb. But during RCIA, before she was baptized and confirmed, we had our marriage blessed. So nice. We are in communion with the church. Okay. I know you guys were curious.
No. Well, I assumed it was coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it had to be. There's no way she can be DRE if they're not, I figured it happened somewhere in there.
She's a way better Catholic than me. So.
The pastor's like, so if this is gonna be
he's like, so I heard this episode of Circle Igloo, I think it was
called. That's our joke at the name of the podcast.
We're veering right here. I downloaded this AI app that my brother showed me, and it's got like, you can type paragraph into it, and so I made one of Joe Biden talking about the podcast. And he's like, I was listening to these four guys on a podcast, Circle Igloo, I think it was called.
That's creepy how it actually
Dude,
looks
the
like
AI
him.
thing is insane.
It's insane. I heard a commentary recently that gentleman believes that it full force is the doorway to the demonic. And I was like, And when he laid it out, it was like, oh, okay. I'm not 100% sold on it, but
Yeah,
the argument
I mean,
he was making was it was like, at least the way he was saying is adaptive. It's basically the highest form of AI, meaning like it basically starts like
learning
and becoming its own like identity essentially.
Skynet, I'm telling you.
He was giving this example from a
Cyberdyne
New
systems.
York, yeah, basically. It was a New Yorker journalist or Wall Street Journal journalist that intentionally spent like 6 months with this one AI, and by like week 3, this AI had picked its own name. Its name was Sydney, and started telling this journalist, "Bow before me, give me fealty, because I know what." Basically started going down like Terminator stuff. You're the problem in this equation, right? And then started like basically like all kinds of weird stuff with the apartment started happening. Like it was like, now mind you, he had fully admitted, he was like, this is anecdotal.
Yeah.
I'm not making this as an overarching claim, but he's like, when you start, and there were other examples, again, anecdotal, no case study, nothing that, is white papered or anything like that. But his arguments were pretty solid. Like I was like, that makes sense.
And for that reason, I'm out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. All right. So that rabbit hole. Let's come back. All right. So talked about Royce being baptized twice.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I guess I went a little bit out of order. Before, when our daughter was born, she was 17 months after our son, so we were still very much kids with kids.
Okay. Multiple kids at this point.
Yeah. That was when, people have the 7-year itch. We had the 2-year itch. And struggled hard.
Okay.
Like, it was watching our friends who were all single. Every one of our friends was single, going out and doing their thing. Wanting to do our own thing and stuff like that. We kind of really struggled on the marriage side of things and ended up actually having a separation. And it was like 2 months maybe, and I think it was enough time of me living with my sister and her staying in an apartment down here, different apartment, a little bit better area, north side of Fresno. But it was enough time to realize that it wasn't that we wanted other people. It was that we wanted this idea of we were 21, 21, 22 years old.
Yeah.
And, we were upset that we were jumped into adulthood so fast. And it had nothing to do with not wanting each other. It just we wanted what our friends had, which was freedom.
Yeah.
Basically we had 2 kids and no freedom.
Yeah.
And so...
Or the allure of freedom.
That idea of that's what the freedom was that we wanted. But so there was one time we were exchanging kids and we got back together. It was fireworks and everything and all that. But then after that was when RCIA started and the third child and everything, and stuff started falling into place when we realized that I had a relationship with God and she had a relationship with God, but we didn't have a relationship with God
as a couple.
And we weren't centered on that. And then figuring that out, it was like it wasn't sunshine and rainbows after that, but it was so much easier. Being able to have the point that this is a 3-tiered relationship, a 3-person, Trinitarian type relationship. And things just started going a lot better. RCIA, and then our marriage blessed, and then just moving into kid number 3, kid number 4, kid number 5, and nothing could break us at that point. And then we just when you go through that kind of stuff, you feel like the little things just don't matter.
Don't matter.
Yeah.
What's interesting about what you said too is it once the triune, right, like starts to really become central and key and important, most important. It's interesting how, like you said, it's not sunshine and rainbows. The fights still happen, the battle still occurs, but you really know how to navigate it at a whole different level.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because you might be really at odds, but you're praying for each other in that.
Yeah.
Right,
Yep.
which is totally different from, well, I'm praying for what I want over here, and I'm praying for what instead of going, no, I really want the best for this other person.
Yeah. Like you just get better at arguing. Is what you get better at having disagreements instead of, like, one of the things me and my wife talked about early on is like, am I really listening to you, or am I thinking about what I want to say next?
Yep. Yeah.
And being able to take a step back and be like, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm not listening to you. I'm thinking about what my rebuttal is going to be. Yeah. And when you can get past that and realize that you're praying for the other person, and if you're praying anything for yourself, it's that you shut up. Yeah. Yeah. But it's just having that realization of the importance of God in the middle. Mm-hmm. Man, I don't know how people do it without.
To what you mentioned earlier, it's that's why we have so much divorce.
Yeah.
It's all starting already without any of that.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
Yeah, it is. I have far more friends my age that I went to school with that are divorced than have been married for 17 years, Yeah. Or any years,
I heard an interesting statistic today, actually. Trent Horn? Is it Trent? Yeah, Trent.
Yeah. Trenton Horn.
Trenton, yeah. So the whole 50% divorce thing was a projection from the 80s, but it's actually now it's about 35%. Mm-hmm. And then families that go to some sort of weekly religious service, mass or something like that, it's half of that even. Yeah. So it's trending better than what it was projected, the whole 50% thing. So it still shouldn't be that high, but because you were saying there's so much divorce, but it reminded me of that. Yeah.
There's also less marriage now, though.
Yeah.
That's something that's trending in the wrong direction. Yeah. Way less marriage. There's people that live together that have like legal unions and stuff like that, or what do they call it, common law marriage, because they've just lived together for so long, and people are just getting married less.
But the bigger issue isn't even that. It's that there's no interest in companionship.
Yeah.
Which is even scarier.
Yeah.
Right? Because the
hookup culture.
Not even hookup. It's that there isn't interest in the other. Right? Like, I think it's one of the ones that Trent references is he points to how Gen Z, which is the latest, right?
Our kids.
Yeah.
Well, I think our younger kids are even a different Gen Alpha.
So
our older kids are Gen Z.
Gen X. Right?
No, Gen X was before us.
Yeah, that was before us.
So what's the one right before
Gen Alpha now? Just restarted.
Millennials is us. Right. And then Gen Z.
Okay. So then Gen Z, he's pointing to, and they're attributing it to electronics, where like the dopamine release that you get from manipulating and using certain devices is replacing the oxytocin that you would get in relationship. Wild. There's also this wild connection between the liability of marriage, right? So the concept of, well, because divorce is quote unquote higher than, call it 25%, right? Do I really want to, go through that pain and suffering, right? So it falls back on, the risk.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. Anyways,
just counting it as a loss before it even starts.
Right. There's a lot of factors. I mean,
a ton. So many.
A priest friend I won't name, basically alluded to the fact that, and I mean they haven't mentioned the confessional, but you read between the lines that just teens aren't really having sex anymore. Yeah. And it's which is like, okay, that's good, but why? Yeah. Well, they're again, there's no interest in, it's like, well, I can just get it on my phone.
Yep.
Get it that way. Why am I going to? There's no social.
It's both. It's the both and. It's I can just watch whatever I want to watch, whether it's porn or whatever else, or it's I can hook up with whoever I want, but there's no strings attached. I'm getting all the benefits, but there's no sacrifice involved in this.
And even and I'd venture to say there's probably even a fair amount that are not even really going down either of those. They're just not even, I don't know,
and that's where I was going
or whatever.
No, that's where I was going. Is there? It's just scarier because it's like this apathy.
Yeah,
there's not a desire or a passion.
No, it's like just let me scroll TikTok for hours on end.
Well, and then that's the victory of the enemy right there, is because there's no procreation, there's no there's no unity in that sense of
isolation.
What God wanted for us.
That's the perfect. He puts you in isolation, and once He has you there, it's like I can do whatever I want with you. Right?
Absolutely. And then you have everything else that's going on. Is like I told people when I was a kid, like a little kid, that I thought aliens and spaceships and UFOs, I always thought that was demonic. From an early age, I told friends that, and they're like, "You're weird."
Yeah.
And I was just, that's what I thought. And then I'm trying to explain it as I got older and older. It made more sense to me, so it just kept sticking with it. And it's like anything that would anything that would make a large population of people be like, if aliens are real, God's obviously not real. Why would you not run with that as Satan? You know?
Yeah.
And I've heard some different stories about like, the UFOs and things that these fighter pilots have seen, possibly being like interdimensional or fallen angels or something like that along those lines. It just makes sense. It's like, obviously we're not looking at little green aliens from Mars, but we're seeing something, and there's studies about it, and there's stuff that these things are really happening.
Well, this is
what else would it be?
This is all tracked stuff.
Yeah,
like you can't argue video.
Yeah, exactly.
On a I guess there is debate around that.
On a 1960s camera.
Yeah. Have you heard Jimmy Akins?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard his whole? He gets out there on a lot of this like alien stuff. Have you heard any of his?
Maybe not.
Okay, I'll find it, Charles.
Maybe not that far.
You'll find it. So it kind of flies in the face of what you're saying, but he such a philosophical mind that you're like, oh, okay, this tracks. Yeah, there's logic behind where he's coming at.
Yeah, big on the Bigfoot stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, he's he gets out there on a lot of his, and I love it. He's asking the questions, and he's not going, I'm giving you absolute proof. He's just going, I'm asking the question, and then we can, have the dialogue around.
Yeah.
Well, I disagree with this. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, where are we at, Charles? Sorry, I lost track.
I think all the kids have been born.
RCIA.
RCIA.
Yeah. Laura joins. How did that? So in terms of RCIA, what was the catalyst for her on that?
It was, we knew, so we weren't going to church every Sunday.
Okay.
It was very much it works today, let's go. It works with our schedule, let's go. And then, the separation happened, and then getting back together and realizing God, needed to be in the middle, and so that started to be more of a conversation. If we're not going to be Catholic, what are we going to be? We need this to be, more centralized in our marriage. So I wasn't at a point where I was like, yes, we are going to be Catholic. It was more like, let's figure out what works for both of us type thing. So we went to like her parents' church, and we went to, there was like a YLCC was like the YLP like community church. I was just non-denominational.
Yeah.
And we tried that, and none of it felt like home to me, but I didn't want to just like come out and be the deciding factor on like, no, this feels right. So I just kind of let her tell me, and she ended up telling me almost word for word what I was thinking. She's like, it just doesn't feel like home. And I was like, well, what does? And she's like, honestly, the first time I went to church with you, I'd never felt like so at peace and at home. So I was like, well, I feel like that means something.
Yeah.
And she's like, so what's the process? And I was like, oh, you're in for one.
You ready?
You don't just walk into the church and get a sign of the cross and you're good. And I was like, you got to go to school basically. And so we called, and I can't remember his name. His first name was Don, And
Farmer.
Yes, Don
Yeah.
Farmer. That was it. He was doing RCIA at the time, and he had just started a class. And so my wife and then my brother-in-law, my sister's husband,
Nice.
started at the same time. So all four of us went through together.
Cool.
And
So you were joining as well.
yeah, I was
Okay.
her sponsor.
Nice.
I learned later on that the church doesn't recommend that,
Yeah.
but nobody said anything, so it was just like roll with it.
What year was this?
It would have been Peyton was 2008, Lila was 2009, so it would have been 2010.
Okay, a couple
Okay.
years after. Actually, I recently heard. I believe Don passed away.
Did he?
I think
Yeah,
so.
he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
We all know where he is. He was a good man.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of what led us there. It was where both of us we both had it in our minds, just hadn't said it out loud. It was where we both felt at home.
Nice.
And I was happy to hear that because I didn't want to be a Protestant. I tried. I really did because I talked to a friend when we were, going to different church services. I keep wanting to call it mass. We were going to different.
I love your honesty.
Sunday-
I tried so hard.
called a buddy of mine. He was in a 4-wheel drive group that I was a part of. That was a Christian 4-wheel drive group, and I was just like, "Look, me and Laura are talking about maybe joining this church." And I was like, "I've always been Catholic. I don't know how to be a Protestant." And I went to breakfast with him, and he was like very like amped up about like being with a Catholic that's talking about being Protestant and stuff. And he's like, "I love the word Protestant because it's rooted in protest." And like the way he talked about it was just rubbing me wrong the whole time. And I was like, "This is
rebellion."
Yeah.
That's what that means. It's a nice way of putting rebellion.
And it just kind of concreted my roots and everything like that. And I was nice to him. I didn't throw it in anything in his face. I just kind of heard him out and took it for what it was, and it kind of had an adverse effect of what he was hoping for. And RCIA was just like, it was so good because like I learned more about my Catholic faith going through RCIA with her than I did in any of my years of catechesis.
Yeah.
RCIA is really cool if it's done by the right person, and Dawn was definitely the right person.
Yeah.
That's why converts make better Catholics than cradle.
You just learn so much more at an age where you have an understanding for it. When you're doing First Communion at 6-7 years old, you kind of feel like you understand what's going on, but you just don't.
No. I also think that there's there's the difference between your coming of your own free will, and saying, "I want to learn about this."
Right.
And so it's like, no one's holding, not that people are, when you're 6 and 7 years old, but no one's figuratively or literally holding a gun to your head, and saying you have to learn this. Even in that mode, you're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
You're just trying to okay, I need to know these answers in order to know that I'm kind of on the right track.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah.
But she thoroughly enjoyed RCIA, and it wasn't long after having our marriage blessed and doing all that she wanted to start teaching, and she jumped in with both feet, which a lot of converts do.
Yeah.
And we had our cold years and our warm years and good years and years where we didn't try hard enough, and like everybody does. But I think COVID kind of was like, man, I knew spiritual warfare was happening, and when they started shutting churches down and stuff, and I think that reinvigorated me, which some people, I think it did the adverse effect, and it just made them be like, I could watch it on TV now, it's easier. But for me, I was just like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is wrong. We need to be able to go to mass. We need to be able to receive, and since then it's we've just, it was like I guess the best word is it completely reinvigorated my faith, and hers too. And she fell into this CRE position kind of accidentally. She's been teaching First Communion for years, and then our CRE retired, and then another one tried it, and then my mom actually tried it for a while, and my dad is he needs he doesn't need constant help or anything like that, but he was sick for a long time. I actually gave him a kidney 10 years ago.
Nice.
And so my mom felt like she needed to be home, so she left the CRE position. It was open again, and somebody reached out to my wife, and they were like, "We think you'd be good for it." And she'd be like, "All right, I'll try it." And she's been doing it for a little over a year now, so she really likes it. But she's a good Catholic.
That's awesome. Yeah. The COVID concept. I used to say this, and I think I've arrived at the point of shame on me for saying it, but I think there's some truth to it still. Maybe I just am not saying it with enough charity, but I was for sure the one that was like, we're not supposed to be shutting down. This is ridiculous. Totally responded in the correct manner, as one should in that situation. Conversely, I also was of the mindset of good riddance. To the ones that were already lukewarm and it was like, this is a good line in the sand for those of you that misrepresent the church. Good riddance.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's right or correct at this point or charitable, but I do think that at some level there does need to be a line drawn in the sand in terms of the church. I think what we've really not alluded to, I think you said it, I think a number of us have said it, in terms of the church needs to just stand on it and go, this is who we are. And if you're not 100% in, then there's the door. Legitimately, there needs to be a lot more of just like a punch in the face of, we don't want lukewarm here. Mm-hmm. You're either in or you're out. There isn't an in-between. You can't stand on the fence. Maybe your heart is in between, and that's okay. But you got to be committed to, like, coming on Sunday at least. Bringing your family at minimum. That's what I'm saying. Like, these are minimum, these are standard things, right? But, like, the showing up when I want to, right, when it fits my schedule, and then, we don't really believe in confession. I can just do what the Protestants do and, tell Jesus my sins directly. Why do I need to, there's a bunch of that exists in Catholicism. And it's just like, dude, no, knock it off. Like, either you're committed to this and you're hell-bent on trying to understand why we believe what we believe, or just get out. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the most charitable way of putting it, but, like, conversely, I was very much in that mindset of good riddance. Spring. This is the new springtime that Pope Benedict talked about. It's like that. To me, it was like, this is absolutely like culminating in what he prophetically put, which was like, we need some sort of, maybe the church is smaller, to your point, but we're not driven by numbers. Yeah. That's not how the church ever existed.
Right. It's crazy because, and I haven't really talked about this since, but like towards the end of 2019 and probably beginning of 2020, like I had multiple conversations with people where I would talk, where I was saying that, and one of them specifically was with Father Michael. We were on our way from Father Jacob's dad's funeral mass to the cemetery, and we were talking about, he was still in Bakersfield, and I remember I was saying, like, I feel like we're too relaxed as Catholics. Like, it's too easy. Mm-hmm. It's too easy. Like, you look at the early church, and even churches for the life of the church, or Catholics for the life of the church, that had to, like, fight to go to Mass, pilgrimage to go to Mass, and, like, we're so spoiled that I can just I can pick. I can go here. I can go to Mass 5 minutes down the street this way, or 5 minutes down the street this way. And I remember telling them, like, I feel like there's a time coming when there's going to have to be a remnant. Like, we're going to have to, like, travel to go to Mass because, like, it's too easy. And then just months later, we're driving to Kingsburg because that's the only place that's open. Yeah. And I'm just like, I remember we were having those events out at Jerry Castro's place and talking about this during COVID, and I was like, just be careful what you ask for, careful what you pray for, because it might happen.
It might hit you.
But to your point, like, had that not happened, I mean, we were just texting about this last night, like with everything going on at OLPH and the community surrounding, but at a lot of different churches of just God is moving, and there's a lot of like young, relatively speaking, us here, young Catholics, a lot of the young priests or priests that are getting ordained now that are just so solid, and there's like a return to more tradition, and you got these young Catholics on fire, and it's different than the church of 5 years ago. I think. I mean, to your point, I think a lot of those very lukewarm, wishy-washy Catholics, sad as it is, like they left and they never came back. Yeah. Sad as it is, but also kind of like good riddance. Like you're the reason we have a bad name. Yeah. You know, so like either be in or be in all the way or be out. And I feel like I've told this story on the podcast before, but what Rich Mullins said when he was, I don't know if you know who Rich Mullins was, he wrote the song like "Awesome God." And,
he was like the one that mentored Tom Booth.
But he was Protestant, and he never became Catholic. He died in a car accident. Like I think he just started RCIA. Like he was on his way. But Tom Booth would always tell him like, dude, you're almost there. Like, why aren't you just? And he's like, you know what? There's enough bad Catholics out there. Like, if I can't be 100% Catholic, then I'm not going to be one at all. And it's like that's exactly what it is. Like, you should either be all the way in or, you know.
And when I mean, and I need to clarify, when I mean 100% in, I'm a mess. Every one of us are a mess here, right? Like, let's not pretend that, like, we don't struggle with certain sins. Let's not pretend that, like, it's 100% means that I'm getting back up and I'm doing what I know is true, good, and beautiful within the context of the church. When I fall, when I fail, when I don't model what I know the high standard is, right? And that's the beauty is that, and I'm just coming to this realization, right? Like cradle Catholic, you'd think that this has already sunk in. It's like God loves us where we're at, and he continues to draw us towards what we ought and are meant to be. And those can exist at the same time, meaning he knows that we're going to continue to be a mess and fall. But if we choose one day to not get back up, that is the deciding, can be that first domino effect of not getting to where we need to be. And that's the whole reason we need the church. That's the whole point.
Fall 7 times, get up 8.
Yes.
It's
it's a hospital for those that are sick. It's not a hallmark for those that,
for sinners.
You know,
and that's the deciding factor. It's like we know we're sinners. We know our sin. It's not about being perfect and like you're saying, like, well, I sin too, and that's not. It's you're aware and you're cognizant of your sin and your sinfulness, and I get what you're saying. Like the lukewarm Catholics we're talking about don't even know that they're living in sin.
Fair,
you know,
that's fair. I guess where I was coming back to in terms of like charity is those are also the poor that we should be ministering to, right?
Absolutely,
and so it's like saying good riddance also starts to really cut a fine line of like.
You got to get into that mindset of where do I start?
Correct.
How do I start? How do I become, what God needs me to be for these people so that I can bring them back to communion?
And additionally, the lukewarmness that I see in them, where does that still exist here? And I'm referring to myself, to the listener, right? Like, if that is, if I see that in them of, okay, good riddance, right? You don't reflect the church well. It should also be a very quick turnaround of how do I still not reflect the church well.
Well, I think that's why it bothers us so much to see it, like why we hate it, because we see a little bit of ourselves in it.
Yeah, for sure. Whether it be our current selves or where we were at one point, or something like that. Because I mean, I know going through these last 2 years with these teenagers and stuff like that, it's really easy for me to be at a point where I feel like I'm in a season of growth and things like that with the Catholic Church, and I feel like I'm making all the attempts I can to better myself in a way, and trying to relate to them at the same time as being in the shoes that they're currently in, and realizing, regardless of what I'm doing, I still have so much growth. I still have so many things that I need to fix in me, and letting them know that, and I think it's more difficult when you're talking about other adults that are dealing with that, because just like we've talked about with marriage and late in life, you're so set, you're so dead set in your ways. And you mentioned that, the people that are like that don't even necessarily know they're living in sin. Is how many conversations have you had with somebody who's a lukewarm Catholic or something like that, that's like, I'm a good person. Yeah. I don't do this. I don't steal. I don't do that. And you're not realizing that the sins that you're committing when you're going to communion and receiving under those sins that aren't that bad is your gravest sin. That's those ones that they're not even realizing, or they don't know enough, the knowledge isn't there enough, that realizing that that's what's bad.
They're condemning themselves without even knowing.
All right, let's bring it to current. So we know what you're doing currently. Where are you going from here, Charles? What's the plan? As far as what you see and what the Lord is starting to reveal.
I've been in a little bit of discernment this past 6 months. I've had a lot of people approach me about the permanent diaconate.
Very cool.
Been in a lot of prayer about that. I feel a pretty strong pull towards it.
Okay.
My priest probably isn't going to listen to this. He's not on board. I've had a lot of deacons tell me that's common.
Okay. So he's not in favor, is what you're saying?
He's not. So we have one deacon at our parish, and he's told me that the reason he doesn't celebrate Mass very much anymore is because he doesn't feel welcome. He's in the congregation. He comes to Mass. He's there every Sunday. He's one of the ones that has told me that he thinks I should do that. Very encouraging to me. Okay. Has made a lot of contacts with people for me, but when it comes down to it, this is my parish, and I need my priest
sign off basically
before I can start anything. Mm-hmm. I can't even do LFI without a letter of recommendation for him, and that's just if I want to be a master catechist. And what it comes down to is he was born and raised in the Philippines, and became a priest in the Philippines, and came here much later in life, and this is his first parish where he is a parish administrator. And it's different for him. Like, he's done hospital ministry, he's done prison ministry, he's done a couple of ministries where he's gone into communities and helped rebuild churches and stuff like that, but he's a parish administrator for 3 parishes, and he's trying to surround himself with the right people and make things line up, and it's just he's learning. And I think he's doing his best. I think he's a holy man, and
we'll leave it at that.
I don't necessarily have his blessing at this time, and I'm just going to keep considering that as part of my discernment process, and I'll stay in prayer about it. But it's definitely something I tell my wife every now and then. I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. So it's in me, and I feel like I'm eventually going to go that direction. But it's got to be God's timing.
Do you have a spiritual director?
I don't.
Okay. I have a recommendation if you want. I'll share it off. I think if you're considering that, it would be good to consistently get,
I agree.
Counseling on that front.
That's something that Laura and I have talked about with our parish community. It's so small. Mm-hmm. We've considered coming down the hill and maybe joining a different community, but at the same time, the church that our parish is at right now is there when it was built. I've been there since I was a little kid. We used to just have Bass Lake and North Fork, and then we built this church in Oakhurst, and so I've been there since this church was established, and so it's very much home.
Come to OLPH, man.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you.
Doors open.
The couple times I've been, I've felt pretty good about it. So.
We'd love to have you. No, it's funny. It's this double-edged sword, right? I'm so like vehemently like, be where you're planted.
Yeah.
You know, if that's like your guys' community, like you need to do it. But then like more recently, I'm kind of like, there is something to be said about, and again, I'm fleshing out the argument. There's something to be said about like finding a community.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like insulating yourself out from like the culture that we're meant to be a mission to. The church is supposed to be missionary. But we need that, again, the reference to isolation, right? Like we're meant to be in community with each other. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
You know,
I think part of it comes to I think it's what you feel called to, because I think a lot of too, like for me in this stage in life, what's important to me for my kids at their ages is community. And I've had conversations like with my brother about like going to a different parish and like, oh, you know, we got to fight for, you know, we can't just all just leave. And but at the same time, I'm like, if your kids don't grow up in community now, you know, it's like they grow up quick.
Yep.
You know, and so to stay somewhere and like fight for something that might be 10, 15 years away, it's like, are your kids, what's going to happen with your kids? They're not experiencing community. And this is not a push at all, you know, but
oh no, it's a push for him.
Recruitment speech.
Yeah, no, but it's just, you know, I don't know.
We need more mustaches in our
more facial hair. Yeah, no, I didn't mean it to be that way. If you take it that way, that's great. But I think that yeah, definitely, like at this point for me, community is like the most important, and we had that in Kingsburg, and we kind of just, I felt like when Father Michael got placed here, it was just kind of God saying,
boom,
come here. And it's I feel like I've told the story, but it's just kind of funny the way God works, because I've always hated OLPH. I think it's an ugly church. I just thought that was just such a dead community. Anytime I went there, I was like,
that's God laughing. He's
like, and it's like, and he was like, nope, come over here. And now it's like, I could not imagine being anywhere else. I just feel like it's just such a vibrant, on fire community, and there's just so much going on there. But,
There's a big group of us up there in Oakhurst that are trying to rebuild that community and trying to make it more well-rounded. And right now I kind of feel attached to like the teens up there, because, you know, I went 2 years with this group, but the next year is coming up, and I've already had relationships with them, and they're going to be coming into confirmation. And I don't know, if I wasn't there, there's really nobody that's going to step up and teach, you know. And then my wife teaches First Communion, and she's the CRE. It feels weird. It would feel weird to step away. Totally. You know, and the couple of times that I've come down and I've seen you guys and saw Father Jacob do a couple of his masses there, and it seems like a great community, and I tell my wife about it every time. And like the community night that you were talking about, it's definitely something we want. That's just, I don't know how to make that break from Our Lady, you know.
Well, and I think especially with what you just shared about discerning permanent diaconate, it's like Ignatius talks about don't make changes, right? Rule 5, you know, in his rules is don't make changes, you know, until it's fairly clear, right? Like, stay the course. So like what you're saying right now, again, I'm not your spiritual director, but that's why I encourage it, right? Because a lot of those conversations will reveal over time, like, oh, okay, I wasn't really paying attention to this link or this block, you know, in the chain of events or things. But most importantly, it's like, don't just change it. You know, like if all of those things, elements are saying stay here, stay.
Yeah.
There's nothing like what you're saying right now says there's nothing that should bring any change. You know, like until it's pretty clear.
And it doesn't sound like you're experiencing desolation or anything like that.
No, I mean, every church is going to have its challenges, and you know, I've talked with a lot of people that have, you know, their difficulties with different parish priests and stuff like that. So I know it's not a standalone thing, and it's
common.
It is common.
Yeah.
But as far as like, since this call has been something that I feel like maybe is there, you know, it started off as, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you travel for work, can you really add in all the schooling and everything that's going to come in with the permanent diaconate? And I was like, oh man, you're right, I didn't even think about all of that. And then I got a job where I work from home.
Yeah.
And then I was like, God, is that you?
Yeah.
You know, and it just makes you think, you know, and like you said, just stay the course and, you know, continue prayer about it and stuff. And it just seems like, you know, little steps keep happening and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe one of these days my priest is going to be like, so you're still considering the diaconate? And
it might even be like, have you connected with Travis McDonald?
No.
Okay, so he's in the LFI program right now.
Oh, okay.
And but it took them a good 8 years. I think it was 8 to 10 years of like solid discernment.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not saying that to discourage you. I'm saying like the Lord's time is the Lord's time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they had started, I think, 2 or 3 kids ago.
Yeah.
Where it was like he was very serious, and we were just chatting about it 4 weeks ago. Amber was not on board at all, and she's a awesome holy woman.
Yeah.
And so he was like it was this funny way of the Lord like revealing how we needed to like be a team more in our marriage. Not that they had any issues, but this was revealing, oh, okay, we're not at odds, but we're just different in terms of like what's going on. And it took like I think 3 of those 10 or 4 of those 10 for her to all of a sudden be like the biggest cheerleader. Like, no, like this is we need to continue to pray about this at least, right? And then the last I think 4 or 5 was life, right? Like kids, and it was like this is not like I can't go to school. He's a teacher at Fresno City, you know, so like a lot of the life circumstances didn't play out well, and then all of a sudden it was okay, now you're ready, right? Like schedule opened up, everything really like doors opened up.
Yeah.
My brother Nathan was considering it, and like within the first interview it was like nope, like he knew right away.
Yeah.
Like this isn't supposed to happen. So yeah, that's my encouragement is everything I'm hearing is stay the course, especially the community. If you're tied in with the teens too, it's like that, and your wife too. It's like no, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we definitely feel that way. It's one of those things where it's like certain parts of it. It's like we just consider it's our cross to bear. You know, the little difficulties that we have to deal with are nothing in comparison. You know,
totally.
If we can, you know, reach one kid from each class, it's worth it. You know? But
where can people find you?
You can go to my social media outlets. I don't have.
You started and you stopped.
I'm trying to remember Charles Williams is my Facebook.
Okay.
My Instagram is Charles Williams. It's something fitness. I think it's hybrid. Charles Williams hybrid fitness or something like that.
Okay.
I could look it up, but
I'll throw it in the
my Facebook. My Facebook will get you there too.
Okay.
I don't do any of the other younger people things like TikTok or what are the other ones?
Yeah.
I was on Twitter years ago, but I don't know. It just got so weird. You know? But I don't know.
Well, Musk is weird, so it just stayed weird.
Parts of it have gotten better.
Yeah.
And parts of it have gotten like you really have to clean up your algorithm and your feed because a lot of it has just become porn to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah, like if you don't curate your algorithm, like I don't ever see it anymore because it's just a lot of like not interested in this post, not interested in this post. But it would be like a sports tweet I'm looking at, and I like click on it to read the comments, and it's just like nudes in bio, like some random OnlyFans chick or something, and then they post a bit, and it's like, what the hell, dude? Like I clicked on a freaking like a home run clip, and why are there? I almost said a word I shouldn't say on this podcast, so I won't. But,
it almost went from rated R to MA.
rhymes with tits. But I was like, why is that on my screen? But yeah, I mean, but you can go to like not and it's after enough of like I'm not interested in this post. Like I can't tell you guys the last time I saw anything.
It's like to your point, Charles. I'm not even on X, Instagram, and Instagram. That's
Instagram. I've figured out that as long as every like couple of months, as long as I'm saying I'm not interested in certain posts, the algorithm's okay. Yeah, like it doesn't destroy me.
Yeah,
like every now and then, like I don't even know what all the terminology is, but the search function where you can like look up. As long as I go in there and I do a little cleanup every couple of weeks, it's not that bad.
Yeah,
and I think a while back I remember it being terrible. You'd open that up and it would just, like you said, it would just be pits all over the place. But
can't do it in public because you're afraid who's going to see you.
Yeah, I know. I swear this is not my stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. But no, it's good. You follow enough Catholic pages and fitness, and fitness is a little bit of a thin line there too.
Yeah,
I just follow dudes, fitness dudes.
Right now, it's Catholic pages and carnivore pages for me.
Huberman, you got Huberman?
No, I don't know. No, but yeah. Anyway,
closing thoughts, Charles.
We need more conversations like this. I think being able to talk with other gentlemen that have gone through and seen similar things and open up and be honest and share the dirty details sometimes is stuff we need just for ourselves. Yeah. That's like I said, I learned with my confirmation classes, like honesty is something that is in short supply these days, and it's probably the most important thing we have.
Agreed. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord, we just thank you for the gift of Charles' life. We thank you for the way that you reveal yourself and work through us in such a unique way to each of us individually, and how just a beautiful testament of your glory as Charles has shared his life with us. We just ask that you would, whoever this is supposed to impact, that you would reach them, and that even if it's just one soul that that ember is fanned into flame to come back to you, to be converted, to be drawn to you, and to come back into your fold, as the prodigal son story reminds us, that you may rejoice and that the angels and saints may rejoice as well. Just ask for that. We fly to your protection, O Holy Mother of God. Despise not our petitions in our necessities, but deliver us always from all dangers, O glorious and blessed Virgin. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.